This guy's got an extensive basketball background as well. Almost went to play D1 in the FBS level in basketball. He had scholarship offers from Washington and Oregon to play as a power forward, I believe. Imagine me and you going up against JT Tuimoloau. We're just trying to have some fun, a little after-school activity, just trying to play a little basketball throughout our high school career. And we're just getting absolutely fucking yammed on by JT Tuimoloau on his way to Ohio State to play the sport that he's better at that isn't even basketball.
Just getting teabagged in pickup basketball. It's like, what am I supposed to do, man?
Just getting put on a YouTube highlight reel within the first 5 seconds.
I am not stepping in and taking a charge against JT Tuimoloau.
Welcome to the opening bell of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. I'm Trevor Sikkema. That's Connor Rogers here for another early positional ranking episode of the 2025 NFL Draft. Today, we're flipping over to the defensive side of things. We talked about quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, offensive tackles. We're going to get the tight ends and interior offensive linemen. I promise we'll touch on those. But we're hitting all the premium positions, the Hollywood positions, the big name positions, which of course means we had to start with the edge rush group here with the defensive side of the football. We're going to be giving you our top 15s, our early top 15s, which Connor and I were chit-chatting a little bit before the show, trying to not do the show before the show, but it's very natural when you log on with somebody who you can't wait to hear their thoughts on a certain prospects. You just start talking. Connor, we did 15s, and I've got guys who I ranked 20. I got 20 guys, full scouting reports on 20 guys already. I'm going to get to 30, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. There's guys that are not in my top 15 who I'm like, damn, I kind of want to talk about these guys. It's just a really, really deep group this year.
I felt the same way. I watched 18 for this show, and as people will catch on deeper into the show, there's two guys that I am not ranking for this exercise today that I'm ranking in different position groups, but you'll see them come up case by case basis in some rankings. So we'll get to them. So that could have even taken it to 20 for me. And like you said, and I didn't finish, right? Like we've been watching these guys for 8 or 9 days and, it's the middle of January. Fortunately, the draft is at the end of April. There's a lot of guys on the Shrine accepted invite list that I have not gotten to yet.
Yep.
There's a couple guys that, did decide to declare, but the high profile guys, the guys that had big summer grades, the guys that have Senior Bowl invites and the big underclassmen, I watched all of them. So, I mean, if you're listening, you're getting the takeaway that this edge group is very deep this year.
Yeah, it truly is. There's so many guys that I want to get to and talk about. And obviously, as things evolve over the next couple of weeks, we'll go to Shrine Bowl, we'll go to Senior Bowl. There'll be even more players that really catch our eye. Got to get caught up on a lot of the Shrine Bowl guys in particular because, dude, we're a week away from Shrine Bowl getting kicked off, which is very, very exciting. All-Star season is upon us. So that's always a good time here on the podcast and here with the NFLSC community as we get to learn a lot about these guys, seeing them in practices. You want to just start with 15? You want to go 15 to 10? Or is there anybody that didn't make the top 15 that will actually be light about? We talk about that all the time, being a little bit light about it, but do you just want to mention the names of the guys that didn't make the top 15?
Yeah, the three on the outside looking in for me that I think deserve shouts was Kamen Rucker from UNC.
Okay, I was wondering where you would have him.
I loved him over summer.
I know.
He was hurt this year, so that really, and I know the last game, somebody rolled up on him on a pretty ugly play, but that he had a different injury that made him miss a couple games this season. So he's somebody that, maybe we get a late accepted invite to an all-star game. I know he has said he's out of eligibility. I think he deserves to be at one of those. Really liked him over the summer. It's just, some tough circumstances this year. And that's why I wanted to give him a shout because, he can rush the passer. He just needs to be healthy and needs to be right. Kyle Kennard did not make my top 15. I know there'll be some pretty decent grades on him, the pass rusher out of South Carolina. So transfer from Georgia Tech. He's a fifth-year senior. And then Mykel Kamara from Indiana, somebody that I did a pretty big tape breakdown for NBC this season and was a transfer player for Indiana, and they got the most out of him. He's a fire hydrant rusher. He's like 6'1" on his tallest day. 6'1" in boots and 265, 270. So he's thick. He brings great effort. I thought he was a good player for them this year.
He's not on an all-star list, is he?
He's
thought he
not.
would be.
Another one that I can't wrap my head around
Hmm.
that one yet with the kind of season that he had. So those are the three guys that just missed my top 15 that I think they can play. I really do. I think that they'll all obviously be drafted, and they're not like 6th or 7th round guys. They're earlier than that. But yeah, they just missed the cut. What about you?
Yeah, my 5 guys that I'm not going to talk about in depth here. David Walker from Central Arkansas, who is a redshirt senior, 3-time FCS All-American. I mean, he was a 0-star linebacker coming out of the state of Arkansas, just a really under-recruited player. You talked a little bit about Mykel and kind of how he's built. David Walker is sort of the same way, 6'1", 260 pounds. He's just a smaller player. Now, I love how he approaches the game. He consistently attacks the half man. His hands are always active. He's just not really built like an NFL player. And so like, I think he is somebody who, given his pedigree, given his work ethic, how his motor is always running hot and how great he was against his competition, I feel like he'll be a depth guy that coaches will love maybe as a day 3 selection, but I don't know if he's too much more than that. He'll be at the Senior Bowl though. So
yes, he will. That's a big deal for him.
Right.
He's 15 for me, by the way. So I'm glad you brought him up.
Okay, so we'll talk about him a little bit more in a second. Tyler Barron from Miami, who is at Tennessee. He's number 19 for me. So he was somebody who I'm very intrigued with. He is going to the Shrine Bowl, so I'll get to see him up close and personal when we're in Dallas at that event, and I'm really excited about that. But he came in at number 19 for me. This is where it starts to get tough. Like, this is where it starts to say, like, yeah, this guy just missed the cut. I got Ashton Gillotte from Louisville here at number 18, and it's like, dude, I like this player.
It's shocking to hear that, but but it's not for me. Yeah,
I like Ashton Gillotte. He brings a lot of power to his profile. I got to think he's in your top 15, right? So
but it was close, and I can't believe that.
So me too. He was. So I watched probably, I don't know, the top, let's say like 7 or 8 guys, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the show. And then I wanted to get to some of the smaller rushers, the guys who aren't necessarily winning with height. So I'm talking about guys like Josaiah Stewart from Michigan, Kyman Rucker from UNC. Ashton Gillotte was another one of these guys. Who's another one that I had up here? Oh, like Donovan Ezeiruaku is kind of somebody there. David Walker, I would kind of put in this conversation.
Yep.
And so I watched all of those guys next. And as I put them a little bit lower on my list, just because I've only watched 11, 12 players at that point, it's like, all right, I got Gillotte at 11. I kind of feel good about this. And then I just watch more players, and I just like them a little bit more. And here Gillotte is at number 18, but I think he's a pretty damn good football player at number 18. So this just tells you how deep this list is. I got Kyman Rucker at number 17 as well. I see sort of the same things that you do. Really good pass rusher last year. And I thought that he was pretty good this year. Again, this is somebody who just, I think there's size limitations for him. And when you have size limitations, you got to have a lot of juice. And there's another player on this list who's a little bit smaller, who we'll get to, who I think's got a little bit more juice, who can make it work. But Rucker was one of those players, so I was still wanting a little bit more athleticism-wise. But, dude, he's somebody who loves the game of football. I mean, he got hurt this year. I was reading up on the background of why he missed all those games in the middle of the season. So he actually suffered an injury. It was a weightlifting injury, he said, in the gym during the summer. And he kind of just like felt something in his knee, but it wasn't like something that was bothering him too bad. So he kind of continued to play through it. Eventually, it was something that needed some minor surgery during the season. And the first game that they said, yeah, I guess you could go out there and be fine, he suited up. And his coaches told him, hey, you're playing single-digit number of snaps. Like, we are not playing you very much in this game to make sure you're good. And he's like, I don't care. I get to put on the helmet again. I get to put on the jersey and the pads again. I'm doing it. So this is somebody who clearly loves football and is is somebody that you're going to want to round out your roster. Yeah, the Butcher.
Best nickname in this group.
And then at number 16, we have a scheme-dependent player, in my opinion, in Jared Ivey from Ole Miss. Do you have Jared Ivey in your top 15?
I didn't get to Ivey. He was the only Senior Bowl guy I think I didn't watch.
So Ivey is massive. So he's a redshirt senior, but he's really kind of come into his own over the last couple of seasons. He's over 6'5". He's 6'5.5", 280 pounds. So we'll get into some other guys in this episode that we talk about. Well, are they edge players? Are they more interior players? For Ivey, I have him, if I'm just trying to rank him in a vacuum, right, where I don't have a specific team or scheme that I am putting him in, it's hard to say, yes, I would definitively take him over some of these players that I have a little bit higher on this list. But if you told me, I know the Cardinals have Darius Robinson, but this is just the first team that popped in my head. Like, if you tell me, all right, I'm making a board for the Arizona Cardinals running their odd front, Jared Ivey's probably a lot higher on this list because he's got really fast hands. He's strong as an ox. He can take on all sorts of all different kinds of blocks. He can play anywhere from like a 2-eye out to he played like 7 technique for Ole Miss, but I don't think you're going to play him too much. He's an outside linebacker type, but he's the one who I wanted to have at least a little bit of a conversation about because I think he's a really good football player. If there's no team that I'm putting him on, it's really hard to have him a lot higher on this list just because he's not naturally gifted as a pass rusher. And to be honest with you, his first step is good for a weight-adjusted player, given how big he is. But his first step is never going to be a consistent threat to the outside shoulder. So it's hard for me to sit here and go, okay, well, even if I project you to a 4-3 defensive end, that you're really going to be that big of a difference maker. Because if you're never threatening to the outside, NFL teams just, the offensive tackles, they're too good at being able to funnel you inside. They know they could cheat a little bit and they don't have to kick slide all the way out. They don't have to overcommit that way. They've got help against the guard as well. So as just a 4-3 defensive end, I don't love what his impact could be. I think he's got a low ceiling as a player. But if you tell me he's going to play in an odd front, well, then all of a sudden I think he could be very valuable for you. So he is 16 for me and just missed this list here, but wanted to make sure that I shouted him out before we kind of got into the swing of things.
No, it's a good call out because a lot of people are going to be, probably wondering about those guys. So you want to jump right in?
Yes.
Okay.
15 to 11.
All right. 15 to 11 here. David Walker. I already brought up that he'd be 15 for me. He is somebody that has had a really fascinating college career because he's had 2 stops. He was at Southern Arkansas, and then he transferred to Central Arkansas. He was actually somebody that I thought would transfer up after 2023.
Yeah, because it was his second year being an FCS All-American.
He outgrew the competition. Right. I mean, this is somebody that literally from 2022 to 2023 had 20 and a half sacks. And, I will have a deeper combo about him in a second. He's just a man amongst boys at that level, which is why I guarantee teams were pushing hard for him to get a Senior Bowl invite to figure out, like, okay, how real 100%. Is this? Like, yeah. That's a shout out to that team that the Senior Bowl that gave him the invite, because this was one that personally for me and people in our jobs, this helps a lot. And I'll talk about Walker and all of those things in just a second. But 14 for me is Jah Joyner out of Minnesota.
I didn't get to watch Jah yet. Okay, wow, you got him 14. Nice.
Another Senior Bowl guy. Liked him over the summer. I don't think he just missed my top 10 over the summer. I actually think that he was better in 2023, but there's just a lot of traits with him. And then you brought up Gillotte from Louisville, who is 13. For me, 12 for me is Donovan Ezeiruaku from Boston College, a true pass rush demon. Like you could argue had the biggest pass rush season out of anybody in the country, just on a pure number standpoint. So I'm sure we'll have a long talk about him. 11 was Jordan Burch from Oregon, who wisely went back to school after 2023. He had really early day 3 grades out of summer, or arguably late day 2. And I think he really helped himself this year. I was really happy to see the changes and the growth that he made this year, because I was not high on him when I watched him for 2023. Same. And then, okay, so Burch was 11. And then do you want to go to 10 or just 15 to 11?
No, just 11 is fine.
Yep.
Yeah. I think 11 is fine there.
Yep.
All right, so yeah, let's talk about David Walker a little bit. I think that's probably the one that I'd like to spend a little bit of time on first. So Central Arkansas, I'm with you, man. I thought that this guy was going to transfer somewhere else. He's Arkansas through and through.
Yeah,
he was born in the state of Arkansas. His first school was Southern Arkansas University, which was a D2 school, and then he transfers to Central Arkansas. So I wonder if basically the only option for him to get elevated was the University of Arkansas, and maybe they weren't interested in him. I mean, he's certainly different.
Him and Landon Jackson would have been nuts.
It would have been nuts, but it would have been so extremely different. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like Landon Jackson, somebody who we'll talk about a little bit later in this show, and Jackson's 6'6", 275 pounds, and David Walker's over here at 6'1", 260. They're just built very differently. So I think that Arkansas maybe would have been interested in him talent-wise. I wonder if Walker and his people, reached out to Arkansas. And I wonder if Arkansas said, like, hey, we'd take you as an outside linebacker. Like, we take you as an off-ball linebacker. But Sam Pittman has traditionally wanted his defensive linemen bigger, longer than the way that Walker is built. Right. I wonder if that was just a thing where he was like, hey, I want to stay in the state of Arkansas. This is my home state. This is where I played. This is where I grew up. This is everything. And if he would have made the jump, it might have been there, but maybe they didn't have a spot along the defensive line for him. So he said, all right, cool. No, it's no big deal. No, it's fine. I'll just go back and have another FCS All-American season. It's fine. It's not a big deal. No worries. But highly productive football player. He's played over 1,300 snaps over the last 2 years. I always like to use a 2-year sample size when I'm looking at things like pass rush grade, run defense grade, run stop rate, pass rush win percentage, wins above replacement average, because Steve Palazzolo taught me when I first came to PFF is the numbers, the data, it's great. When you have a bigger sample size, you get a clearer picture of the player. You don't just want to say like, oh, what was his pass rush win percentage on a season where he was injured a little bit and he only played 6 games. It's always tricky to be able to use those numbers as projectable or stable metrics, as we call it. So I like to use at least a 2-year sample size. Sometimes you could use the whole career, but I don't love using the whole career either, because there's so much growth that happens when you're an underclassman. So I always just like to use the 2 most recent years that paint, to me, the clearest picture of who you are as a prospect. So over 1,300 snaps in the last 2 years, that's a lot. That means Walker is on the field a lot. There's a lot of prospects here on this list that are in like the 800-900 snap count range over the last 2 years, but he's got a lot of snaps under his belt. 94.0 pass rush grade, 93.9 pass rush grade on true pass sets, which is taking out play action, it's taking out RPOs, it's taking out screens. It's basically true dropbacks, true pass rushing sets where the quarterback really has a traditional drop set to where you can you actually have a chance to get him before the ball comes out of his hands. Over 20% pass rush win percentage, 92.1 run defense grade, despite being only 6'1", 260 pounds. You love to see that, but just to give a little bit of context, he's much more of a run defense by gap shooting and getting into the backfield than he is the player who's going to, fire his hands up and inside and hold the point of attack and hold the line of scrimmage there. So to me, I did like this player. Him being 20 on my list is more a testament to just how good this defensive line and edge class is more than anything else. But you had him a little bit higher. So talk to me about David Walker, what you saw in him.
Well, you said a lot of the analytical side of things, the 98th percentile pass rush grade on true pass rushes. That's what showed up to me on tape, is that when there was real dropbacks, this was somebody that is a natural leverage monster because he's 6'1". He wins with swipes. He can dip his shoulder. He can angle his body. I actually saw this year the ability to generate speed to power from his hips and kind of unleash his hands into the numbers of offensive linemen. Now, that also ties to a question I wrote down in the weaknesses category. Like, this is somebody that dominated a lower level of competition. The best team he played the last 2 years was Oklahoma State. That was week 1 of 2023. He did have 4 pressures that game. So it's not like he was invisible that game. He was completely fine in that game. I think that you want to see Kenny convert power against these offensive linemen at the Senior Bowl that are a higher degree of, lower body strength and anchoring. But I really like how he swivels his hips to kind of navigate around blockers and into the pocket. Like, this is somebody that carries 265 pounds, but he doesn't look sluggish. He doesn't look slow. There's not delayed footwork. The closing speed's tremendous. This is something that, we've harped on a lot, but sacking the quarterback is a skill. It's not, hey, this guy had all these hurries this year, he was just unlucky. Finishing plays is a skill, and David Walker finishes plays because he has closing speed and burst. And this is somebody that understands how to create fumbles. 4 forced fumbles this year, and that is also a skill. When you get to the quarterback, not only are you finishing plays, but do you know how to take away the football and create, flip the field kind of situations? The 21% pass rush win rate this year, obviously that's really high. It's not surprising with this level of competition. Like I said, 20 and a half sacks the 2 previous years before that, 39 tackles for a loss from 2022 to 2023. Really interesting tweet from Jim Nagy from June, where he said that he's been on their radar when he was a transfer from Southern Arkansas, because he had the 20 and a half sacks the last 2 years. But Jim said in the tweet that he heard Walker turn down some really big NIL deals for the FBS level. So you brought up the, Arkansas true and through there, Trevor. Maybe this is somebody that was not only loyal to the program, was comfortable in the program, felt it was suited for his skill set. There was obviously some big money on the table for him to jump up a level, jump up a football level, and he passed on that. And now he gets the opportunity to kind of showcase himself at the Senior Bowl. So he's 15 for me. He was ironically 15 for me over summer scouting. And I've had my eye on him for a couple of years now just because the numbers were so jarring in our system. But I think there's real NFL ability with this guy in a rotation. And I hope he has a couple moments at the Senior Bowl that kind of propel him up for people to take him seriously. Because right now, I would think he's sitting in that 6th and 7th round range. Mm-hmm. But if he tests even average and, has some really big wins at the Senior Bowl, I wouldn't be shocked to see him go in the 4th or 5th round as a rotational pass rusher.
Yeah, I got a 5th round grade on him right now. And that's without seeing him up close and personal, which we're going to at the Senior Bowl. And obviously, if he's able to continue to have a lot of success against higher level of competition, even with some measurable limitations there from him, you start thinking about him as a mid-round player just because of how successful he has been. So I got a developmental sort of 5th round grade on him as it stands right now, but a player that I'm really looking forward to watching as we kind of move on here. Man, it's hard to not watch him and think he's he's 20 less pounds than this player, and this player was already very light for the position, but he feels like he looks like Kalijah Kancey. He doesn't play quite like him.
No, but they do the same swiveling and dipping and angling.
They're so great with the hands, and they're so great with, I said this before, and I'll probably say this throughout the show. So when we say attacking the half man, what we mean is you have some pass rushers that just want to go through you, right? They square their shoulders up to the blocker's shoulders. They get their hands inside. They want to push. They want to put him on a sled. They want to bull rush him, whatever. You're attacking the full blocker. You're getting right in between their shoulders, and you're saying, I don't care where your stance is. I don't care that you're right in front of me. I'm going to run through you, or I'm going to be able to stack and shed. I'm going to be able to club rip, something like that, whatever. I'll be able to get around you some way. Walker is always conscious to not do that. And he's always trying to say, hey, I know I'm a little bit lighter than this blocker that I'm going up against. But if I make him if I give him the opportunity to only block me with half of his body, well, then I like my odds. I like my odds there. And so he's always making sure that he's not just running into you square. He's trying to make sure you turn your shoulder. He's trying to attack one shoulder or the other. So he's attacking the half man, because when you do that, it's much more advantageous as a pass rusher just because it limits how well an offensive lineman can stay in front of you. That's why getting around and getting even and crossing the face against slower moving offensive tackles, that's why that's so advantageous, because you get to cut them in half and attack half of their body instead of allowing them to conjure their full strength to stay in front of you and mirror and neutralize whatever rush plan that you have. So Walker's just very conscious of always being able to do that. To me, it's why he has so much success. If he continues to be able to do that at the Senior Bowl level, then we're talking about somebody who's a lot of fun. Let's talk about Ashton Gillotte next. So I had him at number 18. You had him a little bit higher. Where'd you have him? 13, 14, something like that?
Yeah, I had Gillotte at 13.
So Gillotte, University of Louisville, another guy who shocked he's not in an all-star event. He's not a Shrine or senior.
Yeah,
he's a redshirt senior.
No, he's obviously very eligible. I think he got.
I don't know why the word "very" made me laugh there. He is. He's very eligible.
When you are, it is a joke, but when I say that, I mean when you are out of eligibility, you're on the radar of all-star games early. Like the underclassmen, that stuff comes in later now. But
right,
I would imagine there's communication with these guys from the all-star games over the summer when they're out of eligibility.
I would think so too, especially
I think he just got squeezed out of the Senior Bowl, honestly. When you look at the roster, you're like, oh yeah, like there's a couple guys.
Maybe he was waiting for one or the other. Maybe he was waiting for a Senior Bowl invite, and now I think the Shrine Bowl they've already got all their D linemen, so maybe it's too late to go to Shrine. He was thinking that he might be going to senior, and I don't know
either. It's a missed opportunity either way, unless that changes.
So you got him a little bit higher than I do. Let's bring up the profile and let's talk about him a little bit.
Yeah, he's 6'2" and 3/8. He's 266 pounds. He's got a big lower half. That's the thing you notice right away. Like he's a dense waist down. This is a dense human being. Kind of a drop off in normal like baseline production this year. 2023, he had 11 sacks and 14 and a half tackles for a loss. but his pass rush win rate was around 18%. Ironically, this year, only 4.5 sacks, but the win rate was about 21%. So a lot more pressures for Gillotte, but not as many finishing plays. This is a former 2/3-star recruit. Went to his state championship in weightlifting in high school. Once again, it's not surprising when you look at him, like he is every bit of 266 pounds. And that really helps him in a lot of ways. It really does. I mean, he plays with his hand in the dirt. He can play up and down the line of scrimmage. They use him in different alignments. He's got a very varied pass rush approach. He looks like a guy that you think is a straight line power player, but he tries different things. The long arm, some outside burst, swim move. He tries to use his length in different ways to attack.
I give him credit for trying the long arm because
he really does.
He doesn't have long arms.
But he tries to play like he does.
I think it's
maximize his length.
I think it's just like a bull rush variation, right? Like he knows that he's going to win with power. And so instead of just that straight two-handed, hands extended bull rush, you're using your leg drive to push him back into the quarterback's lap. Switching it up a little bit and being able to put one arm out there and have the rest of your body kind of leaning around and seeing where the ball might be going. I think it's just a variation. So I'm glad that you called it out because I give him credit for it because he doesn't have very long arms. And in fact, I think that length is actually a big time limitation of his, which I'm sure we'll get into.
I think he's really creative, and I think he clearly puts a lot of work into his craft because he tries a lot of different things. He's got speed to power. When you're built like that, you got to generate speed to power. He does it against both offensive tackles and interior offensive linemen. He's got a pretty good understanding of how to flip his hips to angle his way into the quarterback. And it's funny saying all of these things because here's the thing with Gillotte and why we're both lower on him, probably than a lot of people will be. I'm sure you'll see him on the fringe of top 10s. I don't think he's very explosive, fast, bendy, or twitchy, or long. I don't think he's extreme, like a poor athlete. But when you stack him up in this class, I didn't see high-end athleticism. And to me, that was the difference of having a lot of pressures versus having a lot of sacks and quarterback hits. And there's times where he beats the tackle. He's creative. He understands how to create space or power. But the quarterbacks run away from him. Like you watch it sideline to sideline. He doesn't keep up with them. These quarterbacks are so athletic at both the college and NFL level now, and they just outran him or kind of, weaved their way around him. And it's not, that doesn't mean you're not a useful player. I want to be really, really clear. But I think it's something that when you're projecting to the NFL level, I think it becomes a lot harder to play that way where you're chasing down Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jaden, like all these guys can really run. So I think that hurt Gillotte a little bit, but his lower half and how stout he is and the way he can play with power, he's reliable against the run. He could set the edge against the run. Like there's a lot of things about this guy that you go, okay, I don't know if he'll ever be this big pass rushing presence as much as he's creative and he's getting better, but I have a floor for him because he plays with power and he plays somewhat sturdy against the run. So yeah, I just don't think his testing, and it's not just the testing, it's what you see on the field, will stack up against some of the upper echelon defensive ends and stand-up rushers in this class.
Yeah, I think that he has a strong first step, but I don't totally disagree with you about just the overall athleticism, right? When you watch him rush the passer, and I'll bring this up, I think as we kind of go on, I'll bring this up with other edge rushers. So when you're rushing the passer, you don't have to do this. I mean, I guess you don't have to do anything. It's free country. You could rush the passer however you want, really. But ideally, if you guys can, close your eyes, unless you're driving, don't close your eyes, and envision the stance of a pass rusher. Normally, your feet are not parallel together. They're staggered. One foot is in front of the other. And if you'll notice, some pass rushers will launch off of their back foot. And when they do that, not that it's the worst thing in the world, some guys are more comfortable launching off of their back foot, but it can sometimes cause, then there's sort of a false step, like a little tap step or a false step with the front foot. And when you're launching from that back foot, you're not exploding up the arc as quickly or covering as much ground as you possibly could. Now, think about it the other way. Think about then loading your weight and launching off of your front foot, the one that is there. Then you are eliminating the chance of any false steps, and you are immediately gaining ground past the line of scrimmage, up into your blocker, and even to the outside shoulder to really threaten that outside shoulder. Gillotte consistently powers off of that front foot, which I think gives him, I don't want to say illusion. Illusion's kind of the wrong word, because I think that he does have a strong first step. It maximizes whatever his first step is going to be.
Right.
But then as the rep goes on, to your point, you see that lack of just overall athleticism. He's only about 6'2", just over 6'2", so he's got shorter stride
that's a
length.
good call. Yeah.
You talked about pursuit speed and him not really being able to keep up with, jet sweeps or running back moves to the outside or quarterbacks kind of escaping. It's because he's got those shorter stride lengths to him. And then I think the biggest issue for him with me is that lack of length makes it very difficult for him to get off blocks. For a player who has as powerful and as violent of hands as Gillotte does, I thought this guy would be a terror to keep blocked up, but instead that wasn't the case.
He gets stuck.
You remind my early comp for him is Adrian Claiborne. And Adrian Claiborne was a first-round pick to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but he wasn't that player that showed that he was worth that first-round selection. And a reason why is because I think they loved Adrian Claiborne because of the first-step explosiveness that he had, that bullish power that he had coming out of Iowa. He was about the same size, about 6'2", 265 pounds. The issue was he could never really develop into a pass rusher outside of that 6-sack game that he had once when he was with Atlanta.
The weirder NFL, like him and Gary Barnidge are two of the weirder NFL outlier situations.
But it's one of those situations where I think if you look at his career as a whole and you look at how Adrian Claiborne's career was as a whole, it feels like that's sort of a good parallel or a best case scenario given some physical limitations and how they like to play the game of football. So that was my early comp there, but I do see a lot of the same things for you. This is a player who, brings you the power profile you love for a football player. And I'm surprised I had him at 18, but that's why I had him at 18.
Sometimes he's like a YouTube pass rusher where it's like, man, like you try things, and I have to really tip my cap to you because I think it makes you, well, one, it's not like he's just out there like doing things like an idiot. Like, I'm not saying that. I'm saying like it's made him a better player than he was ever supposed to be, right? Like I called it. He was a 2-ish, 3-star kind of recruit, and he's developed himself into like a legitimate NFL draft prospect. So I think he's craftier and strong more so than he is an athlete. And I think that could be a compliment because it goes to show you that work ethic's not a question in any way. But I think you nailed it. The word limitations is how I would put it.
Yeah. I think we can go to my 15 through 11 because there's a couple of names in there that are going to start the next conversation. Before we get to that, though, New Year is a great time to reevaluate the financial goals, people, not just for yourself, but for your family, specifically your kids. Now's the perfect time to make sure that your kids are on a path towards a solid financial future. A kid's investment account from Fabric by Gerber Life is quick and easy to set up, allows you to invest in their future now for big education achievements, milestones, whatever it is, so much more. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With the kids investment account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. Kids cannot invest while they're minors, but you can on their behalf. It gives their investments a lot more time to grow as they grow. The whole thing is online, very easy to set up. Could take you as little as just 5 minutes, and then you just manage your child's account right from your phone, right there. I mean, you could basically use this for anything. When they're kids, it's things like sports, music classes, after-school activities, whatever it is. And then if you want to hold on to it a little bit longer, which you absolutely can, going through young adulthood, buying a first car, buying a first home, starting a business, helping them travel the world, whatever they want to do, you could be able to help them do it. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child's future today at meetfabric.com/stock exchange. That's meetfabric.com/stock exchange, meetfabric.com/stock exchange. Portfolios are managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Learn more at meetfabric.com. All right. 15 to 11 for me, early edge rush rankings for the 2025 NFL Draft. I'm acting like we just came back from network commercial.
You really are. We're 33 minutes into the pod, and
look,
you're teeing it up like, okay, here we go. Let's start.
When ESPN wisely prioritizes NFL Stock Exchange over their highest rating sports center, we just got to be ready for it. I'm just getting the reps right.
I actually respect the hell out of that. You are one step ahead. I'm over here playing park checkers on the 40-year-old cement table. You got
but
on.
if you pick the right day, you could be playing checkers in the park against Victor Wembanyama. Didn't he do that in New York? Didn't he do that in New York?
Yeah, Washington Square Park.
Just extremely casual, just playing checkers against Wemby.
You've walked through that park with me. The last time you were in New York and we got breakfast, me, you, and Alyssa, that's the park we walked by.
So I was just about to say, when we left for breakfast, we were walking through that park again, and there were two old dudes playing chess. Always. Respect the crap out of it. And I like, part of me is like, I want to wait for this game to play winner. I got downs.
You can. That's the beauty of it. Like, strangers play strangers all the time.
It's like pickup chess.
It is.
Hey, who's got downs? Who's got net?
It is pickup chess. It is one of the, like, things that you just hold on to that are timeless. That is one of those things in New York. For sure.
I love it. But one of my favorite accomplishments in my life is absolutely smoking my dad in a series of chess at a vacation house that we had. They had like a chess table. I know this is super random, but we were on vacation. Well, I think this was like 2 years ago. And in the living room, they had a chess board. And I had never beaten my dad at chess before. He taught me how to play the game. I'm genuinely, I don't think I had ever beat him before. He always whooped the crap out of me. We hadn't played in probably 10 years. And I was like, hey, Dad, you want to play? I smoked him the first game. Didn't even see it coming. Blindsided. He wasn't ready for it. And then you could tell he was that meme where he's just like sitting up in the chair and he's like, all right, we got to do this. I whoop him again.
Oh, man.
He's got no idea.
This was best of three, and he didn't take one?
I almost felt bad.
No mercy. You've been waiting your whole life for that moment.
Damn, the future is now, old man. All right, getting back to edge rushers. Number 15, I've got Josaiah Stewart from Michigan.
Okay.
Number 14, I have Kennard from South Carolina. I do want to talk about him because you mentioned him just outside of your top 15. Number 13, I have Jordan Burch from Oregon. Number 12, I have JT Tuimoloau from Ohio State. And number 11, I have Princely Umanmielen from Ole Miss.
Okay.
You want to start with Kennard?
Yeah, let's do Kennard quickly. I would really like your thoughts on him. My very TLDR with Kennard was I just didn't really know what he wanted to be at 6'5", 254. It was like, okay, it looks like you got length. You got a frame that could get even bigger. I saw an inside move, but I just, after that, it was somebody that I didn't see consistent enough pass rush. I didn't really see a stout run defender. And I didn't see a lot of different, variety in his plan. And I thought he played a little high and didn't have the flexibility I hoped for. Yeah,
so 6'5", around 255 pounds, but he looks lean. I wonder if he's a little bit closer to 250. But his frame also looks like a frame that you could put a little bit more on.
I agree.
So I think I'm looking at Kyle Kennard through some rose-colored glasses because I think I'm trying to buy into what the best of him could be. So he's a redshirt senior, played at South Carolina this past year, but played the previous 4 seasons at Georgia Tech. He was a 3-star defensive end from Atlanta, Georgia, stayed close to home going to Georgia Tech, and then he ends up going to South Carolina for this past season. It was great. It was great to see him and Dylan Stewart on either side of the defensive line. You had Tonka Hemingway. You had TJ Sanders as well on that defensive line. It was one of the best defensive lines in the country.
Career year by far, far and away.
Oh, absolutely for him. He won the Bronco Nagurski Award. He was an all-conference player, and he was an All-American. I mean, this was the best year he possibly could have had, and he is entering the NFL at the right time. He is truly one of those redshirt senior transfer stories that it's like, hey, this worked out really well for him. So you can take advantage of a lot of great opportunities now that the transfer portal is sort of open up the way that it is. So look, you mentioned some of the deficiencies there for him. I think he's a little bit light when he plays from that 2-point stance as a stand-up outside linebacker type of a rusher. He's naturally a little bit high. He can get bounced out of gaps, bounced out of the club, as they say, a little bit too easily. So you want him to put on a little bit more weight. I'd like for him to be a more dense, closer to like 260, 265. But he also wins with, flexibility and agility and being a little bit quicker. That's something that I do think is a calling card of his game because, man, I actually saw some really good pass rush plans from him. Nice little cross chop. He's got the bull rush. the chop rip with the one arm when he's really trying to just attack the outside shoulder. He's got a dip and rip. He's got that long arm move with him having long arms at 6'5". He's got really nice stack and shed ability for, push pull if it's a pass rush, or stacking and shedding when he's against the run. So he does have that. He's got some pretty good hand usage there. And he's got that little, like you mentioned, that little inside move, that
was
Euro
the best
step
move.
inside move I thought was really great from him. So to me, he really understands how to get after the passer. And that pass rush profile for him and sort of the high IQ and the way that he attacks the pocket is something that I really liked. I like the hand usage. I thought the hands are pretty precise from him. I don't think he's got the best first step, even with him being a little bit lighter. I don't think he's this rare athlete, but I do think he's got a little bit of bend to him. He's got a little bit of flexibility. It's all at a decent level. But ultimately, I think he just tries to win with a high understanding of how to keep himself clean, the two-hand swipes, making sure that blockers really don't get their hands on him. The bottom line for his scouting report for me was Kennard shows a good understanding of how to win as a pass rusher in varying situations, both in odd and even fronts. I think I like him most as a hand in the dirt 4-3 defensive end, actually.
Okay.
But he does have to gain a little bit more weight.
I was going to say, he's a little light right now for that.
If he's going to play as a 3-4 outside linebacker, I think he's sort of like good as is. I think he can survive that way. But I do wonder if his best position is ultimately being a 4-3 defensive end, but he would have to get a little bit bigger for that. He's lean and long, which is a plus for arm length, but a negative when holding up versus the run. His handwork and footwork show a great baseline to build a successful pass rush profile around the league as a day 2 selection, in my opinion. He doesn't have the juice that this player does, which is important with how they win. But he is similar, in my opinion, to your boy B.J. Ojulari, but in how he likes to attack the pocket, but he isn't quite the athlete that Ojulari was, and I don't think he's quite as flexible as Ojulari was. So he's a little bit of a tick down in those two areas, but I think they approach the game the same way. And I think just sort of as a specialized pass rusher, he is somebody who I like the tape because of how cleanly he won as a pass rusher and how he approached it.
Yeah, I don't think you're off at all. He's a weird balance in your mind when you're evaluating him, because you look at him and you go, man, I think he can get bigger and stronger. I like his length, but he is 23. This was his 5th year. He's a 5th year breakout, which is fine. I mean, at Georgia Tech, across 4 seasons where he played all 4 seasons, he had 12.5 sacks. This year he had 11.5. So now the pass rush win rate was only 13.1%,
which I was surprised about.
But that's where it came. That's where it jumped out to me that I thought he played high and he wasn't very flexible. Where it's like he got stuck too often. But his highs, like you said, that inside move, the long arm. When he
wins clean, it's fun.
When he won clean and he had 11.5 sacks, but he didn't. It's one of those, the more you watch, you're like, man, there's a lot of nothing going on here. And I thought there was a lot of nothing against some of the better competition he faced. That's what kind of bothered me the most with Kennard. I think, and I hate being this guy, but I think he had 3 sacks against Old Dominion week 1. Am I making sure I'm getting him right?
I'm not sure.
There was sometimes I write these down where I'm like, okay, big sack numbers are big numbers, but what did was one game inflating? Okay, Old Dominion. Yeah, he had 2.5 week 1, but he had some other big games. Like Alabama, he had 2 sacks against, but one I remember was unblocked. So once again, a guy that just missed my top 15. There's something to work there with his build. I just didn't see a consistent disruptor. And the guys in this class that I did rank in my top 15 that aren't consistent disruptors were meat hook, heavy-handed run defenders.
They were meat fabric.
They are the meat fabric. What did we used to call the method of eating wings? The meat umbrella.
Meat umbrella.
The meat umbrella. The meat umbrella players of the year. That's what they were. So we'll get to them though.
Okay. Jordan Burch. Probably next.
Sure. Yeah, you want me to go real quick on Jah Joyner since he was 14 for me?
Oh, yes, please. Yeah,
let me go real quick on Jah Joyner, who has a Senior Bowl invite, which is really big for him. 6'4 and a quarter, 256, redshirt senior out of Minnesota. He was kind of a force in 2023. 7.5 sacks, 8 quarterback hits, 29 pressures. This year, a little bit dip in pass rush production, 4.5 sacks, 6 quarterback hits, 23 hurries, a 12.8% pass rush win rate, which is actually lower than Kennard's. Long arms, heavy hands. He's got a frame that could play through contact without losing speed. To put it in perspective, like the really low pass rush win rate this year, he had a 23.1% win rate in 2023. I just thought he looked more flexible that year. I thought he looked twitchier, a little bit more loose. Sometimes guys are playing through something or they gain a little weight. You never know what it may be, what they're asked to do. And here, going back to it, you can kind of draw conclusions. I think they played him in a 4-eye too much, Trevor. Like they played him in a 4-eye in 2020. He also plays wide and standing up, but when you play him in a 4-eye, I just thought it took away from the ways he could win and disrupt the game. And, sometimes you got to be a team player and fill a void that's really tough for your team. But, when they played him with his hand in the dirt and kicked in a little bit, you watch the Wisconsin game, he really gets washed out of the run game. Guys get under his pad. Sometimes they would double him and he would be on the ground too much for me. So I still think he's learning how to utilize his length to stay off blocks and not let players get under his pad so consistently. But when you just look at the 2023 pass rush film with the raw build he has and where he was a little bit more loose, I saw a player that, there's something there, and the Senior Bowl could be a really big opportunity for him if he can kind of take a little rest after the season and come in on fire.
Love it. Love the shout out. Somebody who I watched a little bit in the middle of the season, but I still need to do the full eval of him. Now that we got the Senior Bowl coming up, I'll probably wait to do the full eval to be able to watch him in person at the Senior Bowl. So glad that we got him in this show, though, certainly for the reasons that you mentioned. Jordan Burch at number 13 for me. Was he 12, 13 for you?
11 for me.
Okay, so he was 11 for you. So you're a little bit higher on him than I am. True senior out of the University of Oregon. He started his career at South Carolina. Was a defensive tackle coming out of high school in the 2020 recruiting class. He's actually from Columbia, South Carolina. So that is the city in which the University of South Carolina is. So stayed close to home, committed to the Gamecocks. He was the highest ranked player that South Carolina had signed since Jadeveon Clowney, when Clowney was the number 1 overall player in the 2011 recruiting class, which Jadeveon Clowney, if you wonder, like, man, how did he go to South Carolina? From Rock Hill, South Carolina, right up the road. It's only about 45 minutes from where Columbia is. So getting the homegrown talent, the top homegrown talent to stay at South Carolina, that's a big win for that program and that university. So, he came in as a defensive tackle, and Connor, I think that's where I really want to start the conversation, because he played 2 years at South Carolina, mainly as an edge rusher, but sort of this like tweener edge rusher type of a player. He was like, okay, well, is he going to play as a heavy-handed 4-3 defensive end for us? Is he going to be more of a 3 technique defensive tackle for us? Because he was labeled as a defensive tackle in his recruiting profile. And I think those 2 years he played sort of sparingly, only got 1 start. It was that bowl game, his final year that he was at South Carolina, because in the 2020 Then he played 1 more year. He did have 1 year as a full-time starter for South Carolina in 2023. Then he transfers over to Oregon. Last 2 years, he's been a full-time starter for Oregon. But Dan Lanning talked about this. I remember reading this summer, praising Burch for really just getting his body composition right. And you can tell this year, he looks not just more explosive, but he looks quicker. He looks more in control. He looks like his core strength is very developed. And before, it looked like he was a little bit sloppy and out of control in his movements, like he was carrying a little bit too much weight. Not anymore. He looks very, very well put together right now. I'm extremely curious as to what his official measurements are going to be. Because
I have the summer ones. Well,
okay, here's the thing. So did I. But now I've seen people say, no, it's verified and it's different. Because, the summer one is the summer one that you had that he's 6'6", 280.
Mm-hmm.
So Jim Nagy tweeted out like 3 months ago that Burch's verified was like barely over 6'4" and 290. Verified.
Okay. Yeah, so that would be a scout going in and get it. Like right. That would be more reliable than...
That's what I think.
Sheets that we have. But.
So the sheet that we had gotten during the summer, it's like, okay, these are supposed to be sort of verified numbers from the spring. So I'm very curious because, you can look at his profile, and I actually think that him being listed a shade over 6'4" is closer to what I'm seeing on tape, because I don't think he's got this crazy length that 6'6" would indicate.
Yeah, like the vines for
I
arms.
think he's a little bit shorter than that. So I believe the right around 6'4", just over 6'4" measurables. But the 290,
he's huge. Like he's got legs that are just the size of an oak tree.
But if he's built the way he is right now, and he's scaling at 290, that is one dense dude. Because he doesn't look like he's carrying any extra weight. If you told me that Jordan Burch was 270, 275, I'd probably believe you. 290 is huge. And he looks like he carries it really well now. So the measurable part of this, I think, is very interesting because you're going to hear a lot of people when they talk about Jordan Burch, until we get those final verification numbers on him at the Senior Bowl, they're going to talk about him. And you might hear people say like, well, he's got these long vines for arms. He's listed as 6'6". And I don't really see that kind of a player on tape, so I was already kind of questioning it when I was watching it. Not that he's short in any way, shape, or form, but he's just not that 6'6" major outlier difference maker of somebody when it comes to height and length. But anyways, that's sort of the intro for him. A really good season this past year, even through missing a couple of games due to injury. What'd you think about Jordan Burch? You had him a little bit higher than I did.
I was really impressed just with the improvements he made. Like this is one of the stories of, hey, go back to school, even though you could have been an NFL player this year, and get better. And like you said, Trevor, tailor your body more towards an NFL body and improve on your quickness. And it's funny, you could really even see it. Like you just look at pictures of him when he got to South Carolina versus what he is now. I mean, obviously the work has been put in. He finishes 2024 with 8.5 sacks. That's by far a career high. He had a 15.7% pass rush win rate. Just a great size and mass for the position. He could stand up even at that size. He could play with his hand in the dirt. He missed 4 games and his production went up this year. I think he got big. He's got big hands. Like when he throws his hands, there's knockback power. It's kind of the jolt to blockers. He's clearly got very heavy, big hands, those heavyweight hands that, just throw blockers off balance. And it's good to see him working some moves this year. I kind of felt like last year I'd watch him play and it's like, okay, big guy, hold the point of attack, work your way into the pocket. If there's a coverage sack. This year I saw the long arm. I saw a 2-hand swipe. And when you have big hands and power like this guy has and strength, the 2-hand swipe and the long arm hit a little different. Like when you hit that long arm the right way, it knocks you back. When you hit the 2-hand swipe, you can't adjust your hands back up. His size enables him to play up and down the line of scrimmage for Oregon. Maybe at the NFL level, he'll settle into a more defined role. But it's cool to see guys get different opportunities at the college level and never look out of place. I brought up how Jah Joyner, when he's standing up as a pass rusher in a wider alignment, looks the part. When they put him with his hand in the dirt more towards a 4-eye, it wasn't his home. It wasn't comfortable for him. I didn't think Burch ever really looked out of place. Now, the pass rush plan to me is still heavily focused on power, but it is
just being an athlete.
And being an athlete.
That's what I noticed is like the balls getting snapped. Shout out to Owen Reese, who was telling me that I'm not allowed to say when the ball gets hiked anymore because he was going to freak out about it, which is really funny when I feel like I say it like that. But when the ball is snapped, shout out Owen, shout out the Shrine Bowl. I think he is deciding what he wants to do after the fact. Like he goes all right. I'm gonna get by this guy, and then the ball is snapped, and he gets a couple of steps into it, and then he sort of decides, all right, I'm gonna hit him with the 2-handed swipe. All right, I'm gonna hit him with the long arm. All right, because the reason why I think that is because there's too many reps where he's too talented to just run into blockers the way that he does.
Right.
If this dude focused more on staying clean, if he had a little bit more of a plan, at least this is what it appears from my vantage point. Of course, I'm just talking for somebody who's watching the film. If he went into it with a little bit more of an anticipation, a little bit more of a definitive plan, dude, I think this guy could win cleanly a lot more. And I think that there's a lot more in the tank for him to continue to play well. But I just wanted to I agree. I saw him in need of a little bit more of a pass rush plan when he approached things.
I think he's a day 2 pick right now. And
totally.
I would have thought he's a day 3 guy all the way coming out of summer and just last year's tape. And it's kind of a slow build up for him. I think he took the proper steps to play his way into day 2. And I think NFL coaches will really like him. So he ends up at edge 11 for me.
So, who he reminds me of is Matthew Judon. He's bigger than Matthew Judon.
Yeah, he's bigger.
He's definitely bigger than Matthew Judon, but Judon wins as sort of being this really difficult player to stay in front of. And when I've watched a lot of Matthew Judon, he's not necessarily winning with all of these pass rush moves. He's kind of just winning being a really good athlete, being a little bit savvy in his moves, but not necessarily like hitting all of these different pass rush moves to kill you. He's just really being a uniquely gifted player at some good size and has a lot of production in that regard. I also think that Judon is the king, and I don't really say this as an insult. I think he is the king at being a looper on stunts and twists and getting sacks that way. I think Jordan Burch can be that exact sort of player where you're running a lot of crashing and looping stunts, and he ends up being somebody who could really turn the corner for you, come up the middle, the A gap or the B gap with a ton of momentum and be able to get home. That's a big part of what Judon does to rack up the sacks, and I think that Jordan Burch can do something like that. So stylistically, I know he is bigger than Matthew Judon is, but stylistically, how he gets home, I felt like was very Judon-esque. So I agree with you. I think that this is a player who's exciting now, and in my opinion, is absolutely a day 2 pick. Where did you have Josaiah Stewart from Michigan?
I had him at 10.
Okay, so you do have him a little bit higher. So I have him at 15, and there are parts of his game that I wanted to put him higher on this list.
Yeah.
To me, he kind of lacks some precision in his hands and how he really goes about being a true pass rusher. But if you can look by that, and if you could say to yourself, I can teach him some of these hand moves. I can teach him to be a little bit more precise with his hand. Because there are times when I watched him try to attempt like a cross chop or even like a two-handed swipe or like a chop and a rip where he's just he doesn't really know how to throw it yet. Like he'll go for a cross chop and it'll be more of like a cross rip, but he'll like miss the hands. And so I go, okay, well, you didn't exactly help yourself outside of just being really athletic to get across the face of the blocker. You didn't really execute the move the way you needed to. And there are some times when I'll watch him try to do like a chop rip, but again, he sort of just misses part of it. And then he kind of exposes his side or his chest to be mirrored and blocked up a little bit more. But if we hone in on the hand usage, God damn, this guy is fun as hell. I talked about some of those smaller linemen, the David Walkers, Josaiah Stewart, Ashton, Gillotte, Kyman Rucker. This is the guy, in my opinion. If you're going to take a chance on a smaller rusher in this class, this dude's actually got the juice for you. So played at Michigan, started at Coastal Carolina. He's a senior this season. 6'1", 245 pounds, but he seems like he's a rocked up 245. So he seems like he's got some density there to him. Obviously from his size, I think he's more of that 3-4 outside linebacker type of a player than a hand in the dirt defensive end. But you ended up having him at number 10. I have him at number 15, but clearly I'm somebody who wants to buy in on him a little bit more. Did you see those limitations from him as well, or are you kind of all in on what this guy could be at the NFL level?
Of course I did, but you have to pick your spots with small players in every draft. That's something I've really spoken about on this podcast now for a couple of years. Like you can't just, if you have all these undersized guys in your top 75, you'll miss more than you hit. But every now and then, there's going to be somebody that you think breaks the mold because of the way they play, the movement skills. Josaiah Stewart in this class, like you just said, Trevor, is the guy I'm picking because I have him higher than Ezeiruaku. I have him higher than David Walker. I have him higher than Kyman Rucker. There'll be some other guys as well. Stewart, to me, plays so fast. And that's the key. Like the play speed is just, it jumps out at you. I mean, 99th percentile pass rush win rate this year. He gets off the ball. He's got plus pursuit speed. He can turn the corner really tight. He slips by blockers by ducking his shoulder. I thought he was tougher against the run than you'd expect.
Totally. Like, and that's why I say, like, he's like a rocked up 245.
I was like this guy
he'll pop you. He really will.
Right. Every now and then you get a middleweight that steps into the big boy arena and they do not give a fuck. And that's kind of his attitude. And you're right on that. Yeah, it's not perfect with the hand usage, but I think part of that is just the play speed he has that he gets away with it at times. The effort, by the way, is an A+. Like, this is an A+ effort player. Yep. Really crazy. 12 and a half sacks as a true freshman in 2021 for Coastal Carolina. Like, he burst on the scene and was a force. And then when he transferred up to Michigan this year, he's been there for 2 years, but he had 8.5 sacks this year. They use him in a very defined role that allows him to wreak havoc. But, born in the Bronx, so he's got a little New York in him. I know he played high school ball in Massachusetts, but, this is someone that my concerns were that he didn't get a lot going against the Oregon tackles. And I have a lot of respect for those guys, their potential at the NFL, specifically Connerly. But Cornelius is an NFL prospect, of course. And 19th percentile missed tackle percentage. Like, he's playing so fast that he misses a lot of tackles and loses his balance. And then this was something I tracked just from an eye test rather than just going in and trying to do it with, our data. All of his 2024 sacks, to me, besides one against Northwestern, came off of an outside speed rush. The one against Northwestern was a bull rush, but all other of the, what did he have? 8.5, so 7.5 was just with speed. But when I watched him, I'm like, can this guy be a inch shorter Nick Bonito? Like, can he do it? And I'm like, I think there's a world where he can. Like, Bonito, when he tested, was 6'3", 248. He had 12th percentile arm length, 16th percentile hand size, but his 40-yard dash was 96th percentile. His 10-yard split was 87th percentile. His vertical jump was 80th percentile. His 20-yard shuttle was 88th percentile. So, like, Bonito is somebody that's been really good in the NFL, especially this year where he had double-digit sacks, which is just wild in that Denver front. But he plays fast, and he plays more violent than his size indicates. Yep. And I'm willing to bet on Stewart. If you understand the role you need to play him in at the NFL level as a stand-up designated pass rusher that's going to hopefully develop into a little bit more over time. But, man, he's got that closer mentality to me.
The reason why I specifically brought up Josaiah Stewart is because I wanted to talk about him, whether you had him in your top 10 a little bit higher or not. I love that you have him at number 10. The player that I see when I watch Josaiah Stewart is Uchenna Nwosu. Now,
he had some length, though, I think, right? Or no?
No, so
he didn't have length. Okay.
The reason why I like the Uchenna Nwosu comp for Josaiah Stewart is I wonder if Josaiah Stewart is actually better suited being an off-ball, on-ball, like hybrid, like a true sort of linebacker type of player, not just a linebacker that's always on the edge. Because that's what, remember, Nwosu was a explosive, high effort, tough to stay in front of, undersized edge rusher when he was at USC. Goes over to, he plays for the Chargers first, and then he has some really good years in Seattle, battling through injury over the last couple of years. But he plays that hybrid off-ball, on-ball type of role for Seattle when he has been used his best. And I actually think that that's the best home for Josaiah Stewart, because I look at him and I go, that could get the most out of his strength, because he also can flip the hips a little bit. Like, he can flip the hips, he can drop into coverage a little bit, he can pursue left and right. Like, all of that stuff is in the cards for him. So giving him a little bit more off-ball linebacker responsibilities, allowing him to be an A-gap and B-gap blitzer, just screaming at you full speed, running into running backs, trying to block in protection. Like, I envision a really successful role for Stewart if you play him like you did Uchenna Nwosu. And Nwosu, mock draftable's measurements, just over 6'2", so maybe a little bit taller than Josaiah Stewart, but not significantly. Nwosu was about 250 pounds. I think Josaiah Stewart's right around 245. Yep. And then the wingspan for Nwosu was just 16th percentile. Now, the arm length was 53rd.
Which is pretty good for that size, by the way.
It is. Like
33 and 5/8, you won't really get flagged at the NFL level for that.
Right. So he has a little bit longer arms than I think Stewart's going to have. But again, I think stylistically, the 40-yard dash was 82nd percentile. The broad jump was 67th percentile. Like, he was a pretty good athlete. Surprisingly, the vertical jump's a little bit lower, which I thought it wouldn't have been because he's an explosive player. That's the role that I see for Josaiah Stewart. is can he be this Uchenna Nwosu type of a player for you? And I think that's the bet that I would want to make if I'm making it on one of these smaller guys. I didn't mention Donovan Ezeiruaku because I like him a lot, and we'll get to him in a little bit.
I had him 12th.
I had him higher. The thing that worries me the most about Stewart, you pointed out, a lot of his success does come from just those outside speed rushes, especially when it comes to getting into the backfield. The 3 NFL caliber teams with NFL caliber offensive lines that he went against, the 3 best ones, Texas, Oregon, Ohio State. Those were his 3 lowest pass rush games that he had this season. So it's just something that you have to think about when you think about a player like this. But I agree with you. He is a fun player to bet on. And if I'm betting on one of those smaller guys, I'm betting on Josaiah Stewart.
It sounds like you're betting on Ezeiruaku, actually.
I think
Ezeiruaku, I don't even think he's 245.
Here's the thing. I'm not worried about him as a full-time 3-4 outside linebacker edge rusher. Some of these other guys like Gillotte's got these length limitations. I think the same with Josaiah Stewart. I think he's a little bit more of an off-ball linebacker. Kyman Rucker, I'm a little bit worried about in that regard. Right. David Walker, I'm worried about in that regard. I love Ezeiruaku, man. Hey, where'd you have him? You had him at 12?
12.
Let's just talk about him now.
I've talked about everybody else that I mentioned already. So
okay, you've got him at 12. I have him at 8. I think
it's not like egregious. I thought you were gonna have him at like 4.
Yeah, I got him at 1 over Abdul Carter. So no, Ezeiruaku, edge rusher from Boston College. He's a senior this year. He's listed at 6'2", 247 pounds. You think he's what, 240? So what do you think he is?
The spring listing was 236. I think he's heavier than that on film. I'd say 240.
Okay, so somewhere around 240. So, obviously these are lower percentiles. We're talking about probably 10 percentile in height. It'll be single-digit percentile. It'll probably be like, if he's 240 pounds, that'll be like 5th percentile when it comes to weight. So definitely some weight concerns there with him. But, God, this player is so much fun. 3-star outside linebacker recruit from Williamstown, New Jersey. Played basically every sport growing up. Played soccer, played basketball, played baseball, played football, obviously. I read that. So get this. He sat his parents down when he was 10 years old and had his parents tell this story that he had like an adult conversation with him. He's like, Mom, Dad, I know what I want to do with my life. They're like, oh, well, what do you want to do? You want to be a doctor? You want to be a lawyer? Like, what do you want to do? And he's like, I'm going to play football for a living. And they're like, all right, well, maybe not. We might need to have like a contingency plan a little bit here. But he said that he wanted to play football for a living. He's sort of been on that journey ever since. He actually started his high school career as a wide receiver. He wanted to be a wide receiver and make it to the NFL, but he wasn't getting a ton of playing time when he was a freshman and a sophomore as a wide receiver. So when they switched him over to the defensive side of the football, he was actually kind of pissed. He hated it. He was like, damn, I want to be a wide receiver. What am I doing on defense? And instead he played linebacker and defensive end for them and ended up getting a lot of offers, including from Boston College. So he played sparingly his first couple of years when he was at BC, started all 13 games last year. And then this past year, the first 2 years he sort of played sparingly. He ended up getting 8.5 sacks his sophomore season. His junior season, his first year as a full-time starter, he only got 2 sacks. And then he got back in the lab because he was pissed off. And this past year, he tied Harold Landry with 16.5 sacks for the most in a single season in Boston College history. And he is second only to Matthias Kiwanuka on the all-time sack list there for BC. To me, he brings so much to the table. If you can look past some of those size and length limitations, played over 1,300 snaps, which I already mentioned is a lot. Had a 91.5 pass rushing grade on true pass sets, 16.5% pass rush win percentage, 86.5% or run defense grade, and a 9.6 run stopping percentage, which, just to let you guys know, is 94th percentile in how well he attacks the run. This is somebody who is smart. He is cerebral. He understands how to approach the game. He respects what offensive linemen are able to do against him. He understands what they do very well. He tries to use that against him with his gifts. I think he's got really nice bend as somebody who can execute.
Yeah.
It's
legit.
Arm over, the cross chop. There is a rep. I know the rep. In fact, I know the rep. If you guys want to go watch it, you can. exactly 3 minutes to go in the second quarter against Florida State this season. He hits a cross chop so clean, it made me just sit back in my chair. I went back and I watched this rep at least 10 times. From the broadcast angle, from the sideline angle, from the end zone angle. I mean, he hits this about as clean as you could possibly hit it. And you can tell that that's not just a combination of somebody who's got the athletic ability and the length to be able to do it. This is somebody who has been in the lab. He has worked on this move time and time again tirelessly. And you see that with how he approaches his two-handed swipes, with his club rips, with his club arm overs. The speed, the precision, the timing in which he hits these moves are all fantastic. He just approaches the game in such a smart way. If I'm going to bet on one of these smaller guys and I'm putting him into this group with the Josaiah Stewarts and Gillottes and Kamen Rucker and all these guys, give me Ezeiruaku, because of just the body of work that he has had over the last 3 years in particular, and specifically how he was able to bounce back last season to be an elite difference maker this year. I just love how this guy approaches the game. He is so smooth in what he does. 3-4 outside linebacker, give me Ezeiruaku, and I think he'll be a great addition to your NFL team.
Yeah, I think as a designated stand-up rusher, because of his size, like, he could be really effective in that role. It just, the way he plays in space and isolation, the Euro step, he constantly creates these advantageous angles with it to get to the outside. You mentioned the dip, the arm over. He plays very skinny through gaps. The bend is, you either got it or you don't, and he's got it. That's a key. He's got it. My questions are, I saw tackles that had better length stall him out, because he likes playing in so much isolation and space. And the way you counter that as a tackle is if you have length, you obviously could protect the larger radius in those scenarios. And I saw him get stalled out in those scenarios a little bit. And then this is one where, like, maybe I'm just wrong and maybe the combine will shut me up, or seeing him. It's amazing. All of these guys that we're talking about, undersized guys, they're all Senior Bowl accepted invites. Ezeiruaku, Josiah Stewart, David Walker. Like, that's really awesome for everybody in the draft community. I don't think he's as fast as I expected, Trevor.
Go ahead.
Like 236, say he's 240, say he's 244. I would think like 4.6-ish. I don't think he is. I don't think he's that fast. I think he's really slick, like bendy, pliable, all these short area moves. But when it came time to really run and chase, I was like, wow, he's not that fast at that weight. And you almost have to be. So that's one thing where I really like seeing him in person and watching him run. Like, I'll get a better clarification on that.
I think that he does have some physical limitations. I just love how smooth he is, how precise he is, and again, how he approaches the game as a pass rusher. But there's no doubt about it. I have speed to power concerns. He's not somebody
there's nothing
who's going to explode off it. Now, I think he's a solid run defender because of his technique. You get the hands up. You always have leverage. You're able to sort of stand your ground a little bit. You can stack and shed. You can get between gaps. You might be able to be a good run defender that way, which I think he is. But if you're asking him to go pound for pound against NFL offensive linemen on a consistent basis, I think that you're going to be a little bit disappointed. But I think
that's a tough ask.
The way that he approaches the game, I feel as though he's not going to put himself in those situations more often than not. The early comp that I had from him, you remember Christian Miller before he went through all of his injuries at Alabama? I mean, this dude had the arm length. He could bend. He was a speedy guy. Now, I think he had a little bit better of a first step than Ezeiruaku did. I think he was a little bit more explosive in that regard, but he had that bend, and that's really how he won. And I feel like Ezeiruaku wins in a similar weight profile. Matt Holder, who does a great job building out scouting reports for Bleacher Report, I saw him have this comp, which I also like, is Nick Herbig. And Herbig is somebody who Pittsburgh has put in the perfect situation to say, hey, we're not going to make you go through somebody's chest. We're not going to make you hold the line of scrimmage as a 5-tech defensive end. We are going to let you be a stand-up, 6 technique, 7 technique, whatever it is, stand-up outside rusher, and we're going to let you attack the outside shoulder or maybe the inside shoulder with isolation one-on-one against these guys to try to stay super clean. And Herbig's had elite pass rushing grades this past year in multiple occasions. So that's kind of the player where I go, dude, even if Ezeiruaku is like just that, great. Give me
like
that player.
30% of snaps, but like a really productive 30%.
An extremely productive stand-up outside linebacker pass rusher for you.
Yeah,
Like
NASCAR package.
I am great with that. Because what was Herbig's? What did Herbig run? Let me look. Because stylistically, I really like the comp.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, size-wise.
So Herbig, it was
4.65.
Just over 6'2", 240 pounds with 31 and a 1/4 inch arm. So I think Ezeiruaku's got longer arms. But the 40-yard dash, 4.65 right there. I mean, I think Matt nailed it with this comp. So shout out to Matt for that. Again, I came up with Christian Miller early on, but I think I actually liked the Herbig comp better. So shout out to Matt for that one. But yeah, man, big fan of Ezeiruaku.
That 10-yard will be key because Herbig did have a 70th percentile 10-yard split, which is such a key metric for edge rushers.
True.
Ezeiruaku really needs to have that. He really does. So, all right, so 10 to 6.
So I don't even think
did we miss anyone for you?
So 15 for me was Josaiah Stewart, 14 was Kyle Kennard, 13 was Jordan Burch, 12 was JT Tuimoloau, and 11 was Princely Umanmielen.
I'm higher on both of your last guys.
Okay,
but we could talk Princely first if you want. I had him at 7.
Okay, so I mean, you had him at 7. Go ahead. I had him at 11.
I'll read. I think I should read. I could read it after this. So Princely, I have at 7. He is
Ole Miss redshirt senior.
Yeah, Ole Miss redshirt senior that transferred from Florida. 6'3" and 3/4, 258. He is a hell of a watch because he's long, he's loose. There's a lot going on here with this player. He had 10.5 sacks this year, 16 quarterback hits, 29 hurries. He had almost a 24% pass rush win rate. And on third downs, his win rate was 27.5% this year. I mean, he
can rush the passer, man.
He's your worst nightmare on 3rd and long on a deep drop. I think he single-handedly forced Georgia's Ernest Green to go back to school.
He is Ernest Green's nightmare, though, when you think about the type of player that Ernest Green is.
If you have heavy feet, you're doomed against Princely Umanmielen.
Yeah.
And that game, that game was a reckoning. It was actually jarring that they didn't just park Oscar Delp or somebody next to Green the rest of the game after like 2 reps, where you're like, this isn't like, you got to help the guy. Anyway, looks his best as a stand-up rusher, speed off the edge, length, quickness. I'm actually shocked from some wider alignments. There's flashes of speed to power. Like, I didn't think that'd be a part of his game, but there are moments where he shows, no, I'm not just a finesse rusher. I can convert speed to power. He loves the Euro step because, once again, like Ezeiruaku, when you fake that step deep into the gap and the tackle bites, the angle you create to the outside shoulder is so much leaner. And if you are loose and can dip and you have good ankle flexion and you could turn a tight corner, it's like having an inch of the door. And then when you use the rocker step or the Euro step, it's like the door becomes 4 feet open instead. So, and you can kind of sliver through there. You know what? Against the run, he's got these long strides and there's instincts. I'm not going to sit here and tell you he's going to set some crazy hard edge all the time, but there's instincts against the run to disrupt plays in the backfield. And I mean, this is a 98th percentile pass rush win rate guy. Like, he was one of the best in the country at just getting after the quarterback, and he played in the SEC. It's not like he's racking up these great analytical profiles while, roasting poor competition. The things I want to see more of is, I think he's still learning how to utilize his length to counter during reps. Like, if he learns how to utilize that length to get off blocks consistently and get away from the first move and develop a second move, that's going to take him to the next level. I don't think he's a striker with his hands. He's more of a shooting guard. Okay, let me dribble the ball as deep out as I can. Come with me. How am I going to angle my way around you, spin around you? I'm not going to just punch you in the chest over and over again and wear you out. There's the speed to power flashes, but it's not the plan. It's not the 1A or 1B plan of his game. So, but man, like, I know there's like a little recency here because he just had a really good year and he's a young player for the Jets, but there's a lot of Will McDonald in this guy's game where everybody looks around and they're like, I don't know, he's not this power rusher. And then you blink and your tackle's on an island because you're down a touchdown and you got to play the drop back game. And it's like, we can't block this guy one-on-one. We cannot block him one-on-one. So Umanmielen, like, he's got all the tools and traits and tricks. He does. I'd like to see a little bit more sandpaper in his game, but I liked him, Trevor. I really did. I think he's got the pass rush juice.
I totally understand you being higher on him, because if you or anybody out there predicates how you stack up edge rushers with twitchiness, explosiveness.
Yeah, that's the end of the game.
I mean, like, that's this dude. Now, I think that if Princely doesn't win with the first step or the bend, it's hard for him to get off of blocks.
He stalls out.
He doesn't have a lot of counters. He really stalls out. The speed to power, I was not super impressed with from his tape as a whole. It really is like either he hits that Euro step, the cross face, or just like getting to the outside, whatever it is. Either he wins with finesse and twitch immediately, and it's just one of the sickest reps you've ever seen,
right?
Or he doesn't really win the rep, and
he might be Keon Coleman of edge players.
Ooh, that's a good call out.
Where like you log on YouTube and the algorithm's like top 5 sickest pass rush moves from Princely Umanmielen this year, and you watch it and you're like, all right, I'm taking him top 25.
Yeah, all right, he's going to Carolina at 8.
Yeah, like, but you watch the whole sample size and you're just like, I don't know if he'll ever be a complete player, and he'll be a little scheme specific, which is why I ended up, having 6 guys ahead of him. I talked about him like I thought he was the greatest player in the world, but I still had 6 guys ahead of him. But like, I don't know. Like, he's going to be a handful down in Mobile for any tackle one-on-one. I'll tell you right now.
Here's what I really want to see from him. Just clean up the hands and the feet. If you tell me that we've got that, like, I'm good drafting you exactly where you're talking about drafting him. Because to me, like we referenced before, he launches off the back foot all the time.
Yep.
I see like a tap step and a false step, even like a side step sometimes, like too many times when he's just trying to get up the field. His feet can also be like not pointed in the backfield or not pointed to the ball. Like sometimes they're very like open and obtuse, and he's like
basketball moves.
And he's like launching off of his foot like that, which isn't really engaging the quad muscle the way that you need to. And so I feel like his footwork is erratic and all over the place. And I think the same with his hands. Like, I think that he's super fast with his hands, but the reason why it's very difficult for him to get off of blocks is because his hands aren't going exactly where they need to. And then once offensive linemen get their hands on him, well, then he's trying to counter, he's trying to get off, and he's not able to do it. So if you tell me that it's a guarantee we're cleaning up his hands and his feet, absolutely. Top 8 pass rusher, top 5 pass rusher, probably in this class. But to me, I agree with you. There were too many inconsistencies from him. And it's why I ended up having him at 11. Maybe we go down to, because he's at the Senior Bowl, isn't he?
Yep.
I think. So like maybe we go down to the Senior Bowl and maybe his movement skills are just so damn different than everybody down there that I go, okay, well, I got to elevate him a little bit more. I got to bump up some of the numbers that I have within the formula of kind of how I spit things out for these early rankings. But an inconsistent player, but a damn impressive one when it comes to flashes. So I absolutely understand anybody buying into him. JT Tuimoloau from Ohio State's next guy I want to talk about. I have him at 12. Where do you have JT at?
I had him at 5.
Whoa, okay, so you got him at 5. So this is I wonder where he's going to be more commonly for rankings. Senior at Ohio State, a former 5-star edge rusher in the 2021 recruiting class, number 4 player in the country, number 2 defensive lineman in the country at that point in time, and the 24th highest ranked player that 247 has ever had. Listed at 6'4", 270 pounds, so he brings the size that you want for an edge rusher from Ohio State. Has been lower when it's come to explosive plays. I think this year was certainly better from him. Overall, 2-year sample size, almost 1,300 snaps. He'll get over 1,300 snaps when they play in the national championship game next week. 12.9 passers win percentage, which is 53rd percentile, 6.4% run stop rate, which is 47th percentile. I'm curious, you got him at number 5. This guy's got an extensive basketball background as well. Almost went to play D1 in the FBS level in basketball. He had scholarship offers from Washington and Oregon to play as a power forward, I believe, or maybe it was a small forward. I can't remember what the offer was exactly. He played like guard, power forward, center in high school because, of course, he's JT Tuimoloau. You're going to play him everywhere in high school. Imagine me and you going up against JT Tuimoloau. We're just trying to have some fun, a little after-school activity, just trying to play a little basketball throughout our high school career. And we're just getting absolutely fucking yammed on by JT Tuimoloau on his way to Ohio State to play the sport that he's better at that isn't even basketball.
Just getting teabagged in pickup basketball. It's like, what am I supposed to do, man?
Just getting put on a YouTube highlight reel within the first 5 seconds.
I am not stepping in and taking a charge against JT Tuimoloau. Just take the points, bro. I want to go home and enjoy my life.
So you got him at 5. I got him at 12. Talk to me about why you have him so high and what you like about Tuimoloau.
He really grew on me because I looked back at my summer rankings. I had him, I think, 9th.
Mm-hmm.
And I just watched him over summer, and I'm like, I get it. He was a 5-star. I get he does all the little things right. But I just looked at him, and I'm like, man, he's such a boring player. Like, there's just not a lot of this creativity in his pass rush plan. He's not going to really be this insanely agile kind of loose rusher. And then, there was a lot of like effort sacks. But I watch him this year, and he's just grown on me over time. He's got these heavy hands. He constantly brings a jolt. He wears out offensive linemen. Mm-hmm. Him and Sawyer love that two-handed swipe. Like they were coached up and it's so refined, their two-handed swipe. The thing is with Tuimoloau, where you watch him, like he's battle-tested. He's gone up against Olu Fashanu. He's gone up against Joe Alt. He went up against high-end tackles this year. He just puts on his hard hat against the run, unlike really maybe any other player in this draft. And like I'll say it right now, I'm at 5. In 5 years, will Tuimoloau be getting the same publicity that Abdul Carter and all these sack artists get? No. Will he be a core player of an NFL defense because he's so damn reliable up front? He's really stout against the run. He brings power and effort as a pass rusher. He's very smart. This is the king cliche. He's a winning player. This is a winning player. This is what a winning player at every level looks like, where he's got the size, he's got the mindset, he's over 6'4", he's probably going to play at 270 pounds. When you watch him, 91st percentile run defense grade in 2024, by the way. And it's not just how strong he is, his eyes up awareness. He knows what the offense is trying to do. Like he understands different run concepts and how the blockers are trying to attack him. And when you watch him at the goal line, I haven't seen a player in this class like this at the goal line. It's like he takes the end zone. It's his personal real estate. Totally different animal at the goal line, where he is just wrecking people in front of him at the goal line and finding a way. He goes from like, okay, between the 20s, I'm responsible. I'm going to hold the point of attack. I'm going to read and react. At the goal line, it's I'm going to disrupt. I'm going to let loose. I have a different gear that now I'm allowed to play this way. So, and I just think his power profile, is he going to be the guy that wins in 2.5 seconds all the time? That's not who he's going to be, right? Mm-hmm. It's not. But is his power profile going to complement on the other side of a more finesse, loose attacking rusher perfectly? You have to have guys like this on an NFL defense. You can't just build it out with the Princeleys and the Josaiah Stewarts, right? And I brought up Will McDonald before, who I love, but you need the hard hat guys that have a power profile that translates against any level of competition. And Tuimoloau is exactly that guy. And there is some times where it's like, okay, he spun off that, but he had a spin move against Iowa that I almost spit out my drink. It was like not really pretty, but it worked. And he rolled into the quarterback. And I think Sawyer got on the stat sheet for it a little bit. It's the funniest play probably of this entire
You just described a not good play. I thought you were about to describe like the sickest spin move of all time.
No,
like
but
the
it
second
shows
coming
that
of Dwight Freeney.
It goes back to like trying things, and it did work because the tackle was like, "What the hell is this?" I thought you were.
Oh, so you got him at number 5 because he tries?
No.
I'm just kidding.
This is somebody this is what an NFL player looks like, and it's not always always just having 12 sacks every year. And then in this league right now, like, look at the teams left in the playoff right now of how they run the football. Mm-hmm. These are the kind of guys you need. And I think that he has enough pass rush power, more so than guys I have behind him, with that kind of separated the gap. Because there's good run defenders in this group, but he has the build and the resume and enough pass rush juice, just enough that I had him at 5.
He reminds me of Kwity Paye. I think he's a little bigger than Kwity Paye, a little bit longer than Kwity Paye, but he reminds me
so much more refined. Like Kwity, I just look at it and like there's so much athleting with him. Like Tuimoloau, I think has been Tuimoloau, I could actually play in an NFL game today in some kind of role. That's how I felt about watching him.
I think so too. And maybe I'm not. I think JT Tuimoloau is going to be fascinating with where people have him ranked. Because if you respect the floor more than anything else, you're going to have him a lot higher. Because his bust rate, in my opinion, is it's so low. This guy's going to play in the NFL. It's just a matter of where he's going to play. And I'm excited to get the team-centric big boards when we do that over at PFF this offseason, because I think Tuimoloau is going to be a player who can rise up a lot of these team-centric big boards as that 4-3 heavy-handed defensive end. I just felt as though the burst is limited, the bend is limited.
Yeah, he's not twitchy.
I just don't think he's ever going to be like a guy who can really consistently attack on the outside shoulder. And then at that point, I just go, all right, well, he's a guy that maybe every team would want, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just, perhaps I am devaluing the floor that he brings to the position, but I just didn't see a player who was ever going to be a special pass rusher at the NFL level. I felt like he had a good amount of cleanup sacks throughout his college career. And even he does. I feel like there's just not a lot of sacks in his game. So that's why maybe I'm a product of putting some of these flashier guys above him, but that's how I had JT at number 12.
So what was your 10-6?
So 10-6 for me. I have Jalon Walker from Georgia at 10, which I do want to talk about here for a second. Landon Jackson, I have from Arkansas. I have him at number 9. I mentioned I got Donovan Ezeiruaku at number 8. Number 7, I have Nic Scourton from Texas A&M. And number 6, I have Jack Sawyer from Ohio State. So
okay, I'll read mine quickly before you go, because I kind of forgot to. 10 for me, I already said Josaiah Stewart from Michigan. 9 for me is Mykel Williams from Georgia.
Okay.
8 for me is Landon Jackson, who you just said, from Arkansas. 7, I had already said, that's Princely Umanmielen from Ole Miss. 6 for me was Jack Sawyer, right behind his teammate JT Tuimoloau. Jalon Walker, I thought I was going to evaluate as an edge rusher. I'm going to evaluate him during the linebackers show.
So I agree with you. So I have Jalon Walker at number 10. And for the longest time, I thought to myself, all right, where George is playing him as an off-ball linebacker, he's 6'2", 245 pounds, but he is somebody who shows a lot of power, shows a lot of density, certainly does his best work as a pass rusher, but it felt like Georgia just had him as an off-ball linebacker because, one, it behooved their depth chart to be able to put him on the field as an off-ball linebacker, and 2, maybe it was just they were trying to round out his profile. But when I watched him, it felt like his best reps were when he was attacking the pocket, when he was used as a pass rusher, and when they would put him on the edge on occasion. So I said to myself, okay, well, I'm going to watch him for the edge rush episode. I did not like him nearly as much as I thought I was going to for an edge rusher. I don't think that he is a full-time edge rush player. He doesn't really have any sort of a pass rush plan. He kind of just wins by bull rushing right now. Now, the strengths, he's a great athlete. I mean, I can understand why people want him on their football team. He's got the size to be able to play as an off-ball and on-ball linebacker, first step explosiveness in all directions, really powerful upper body. He's got longer arms than a guy who would be listed at 6'2", but when it comes to the weaknesses here for him, doesn't have a lot of experience or success in coverage. So if you want to play him as just a true off-ball linebacker, you need to make sure that he's dedicated to that, because he doesn't have a ton of coverage responsibilities where he has a lot of reps where you go, okay, that's a really great coverage rep. He lacks some quickness needed for off-ball linebacker work. I think he's a little bit too heavy for off-ball linebacker work. He's explosive, but is he nimble? I wouldn't call him nimble, and you kind of need to have that when you're playing at the second level. Lacks true mastery of any pass rush moves. hand usage due to his time split as an off-ball and an on-ball linebacker. I feel like the instincts, the anticipation are still a work in progress, but he is just a true junior. So that's understandable with him sort of playing in multiple positions and being in the lineup just over the last 2 years as an underclassman. And then, in my opinion, he's just too comfortable with like running into blockers. Like that's what he does. Like he's a pass rusher who just runs into blockers. Right now, he reminds me of Devin White. And Devin White was taken 5th overall by the Buccaneers. But, I guess they don't win that Super Bowl without him. So you can't say that it wasn't worth it.
It's a weird one, right?
To just have him on the team. But he clearly was not worth that type of a selection. And you've seen that since that Super Bowl season for the Buccaneers, how the rest of his career played out in Tampa. And then he thought he was getting this mega deal. He ends up signing a 1-year deal. And then he gets cut from that anyways. So I thought I was going to watch Jalen Walker and just see like a player that I've got to have on my football team.
Right.
And instead, there were too many times when I watched him and I went, man, is he kind of just this weird off-ball linebacker tweener where his best reps are when he's blitzing in the A and B gap, but how often are you going to have him do that? I mean, that's not even necessarily a pass rush specialist type of a player. So I thought I was going to see much more of a 3-4 outside linebacker guy that I was just going to love to want to get on my team as that outside linebacker type. And I still think he's a really good, I think he's a good football player. He's a great athlete. Like I said, like his body is built for playing in the box at the NFL level. I just came away from watching his film going, all right, well, what's his calling card? Like, where am I playing him? Because in reality, I think that his best rushes come from being an off-ball linebacker that blitzes the line of scrimmage. When he's a true edge rusher, yeah, he can sometimes win the bull rush, but NFL offensive tackles, if you're just trying to bull rush NFL offensive tackles, you're not going to be nearly as productive as you need to be as a full-time edge rusher. And then I already mentioned, I think some of the anticipation instincts and coverage aren't quite there for him. And I also think that where he is explosive, he's a little heavy-footed when it comes to flipping the hips and changing direction and being nimble on his feet if you want him as a true off-ball linebacker.
Right.
So a well-built, explosive, impressive, physically gifted box defender, but one who his fit in the NFL is going to be a lot more important than I thought it was going to be going into his film review. So that's where I got him here at number 10.
Yeah, I think it's totally justifiable. Like I said, I'm gonna have him in my linebacker rankings just because it's a long conversation that you started off really well, and I think the deeper and deeper you get into it, you're like, okay, maybe he's not just going to go into the NFL and play 70 to 80% of his snaps with his hand in the dirt rushing off the edge.
Right. What'd you think of Landon Jackson? Landon Jackson from Arkansas, the senior there, somebody who started his career out at LSU, played 1 year there, transferred over to Arkansas. He, like Jordan Burch, has sort of been retooling his body. Now he weighs in at just over 6'5", 270 pounds, and it feels like, man, he is the best version of himself. You had him, I believe, at number 8. I had him at number 9, so we see him pretty similarly. Yeah. What'd you think of Landon Jackson?
We talked about this over the summer. He tore his ACL in high school, and then he tore his ACL, or he had an ACL injury his freshman year at LSU. So like a really delayed start, and now it's all kind of coming together for him. This season, 6.5 sacks, 8 quarterback hits, 20 quarterback hurries, only 11.5% pass rush win rate. He's very big. He's got length. He's got density. He's kind of a maniac through contact. This is like true bull in that China shop of where I'm just going to absolutely power through everything in front of me. The teams try to chip him or give help blocks, and he just doesn't care. He kind of treats it as like a toddler at times and runs through it like a maniac. We talked about this over summer. Like he had a legit 4-sack game against Alabama in 2023, and that's where the green light started to come on for him as a prospect. But there's times where I'm surprised with his build, how big he is, that he can corner a little bit.
Yes.
I'm like,
dude,
how do you do this?
He'll hit a cross chop sometimes, and you'll go, wait, what?
It's
what?
Very perplexing, and very impressive. Thunderous hands, very big upper body. He really this year started to use his long arms to knock down passes, which was cool. 3 batted passes this year. 95th percentile run defense grade. He is really good at stacking and shedding in the run game. Like he understands that, hey, I don't just have to work around all these blocks. I can take on the contact, discard you, and either redirect the running back or find a way to make the play. So, the pass rush win rate, It did go up on true pass rush reps, 68th percentile. So not elite, but it was better in real scenarios, real rushing scenarios. Here's some of the things with Landon Jackson where I have my concerns. And I still think there's a floor for him because of the power profile, specifically against the run. Mm-hmm. He has a very upright approach. Like the pass, it's a very upright approach. While he can corner into the pocket, when quarterbacks evade him, there's no way to like second effort. Like that's where you see the lack of short area agility, that it's like, oh, he slipped around me. Now let me adjust and chase him. It's like, oh man, like he got away from me. And that's kind of it. That's kind of the play because he's so big and he's so strong and he's got a big upper body. So it's not like, let me stop, flip my hips, run the hoop. There's not a lot of that. There's a lot of pass rush attempts where it's like, there's no plan. The plan is I'm bigger and stronger and nastier than you, and you better get out of my way. And it works sometimes, but it's got to get a little bit more, methodical at the NFL level. I don't think he's very quick off the ball. He's got that lower body injury history that you got to keep an eye on, but that was a while ago. So yeah, I like the floor of Landon Jackson. Like I'd like him on my defensive line to play some early downs and be a heavy hitter. I just think he's not a true sack artist kind of guy. And that's where the limitations are from. And he's a little sluggish at times, but man, does he bring the thunder. Like he really does. He has NFL starter written all over him. There's no denying that. I don't know if there's the upside that the guys ahead of him have, but it's still it goes to show you the depth of this class that I have Landon Jackson at 8, because I think somebody will take him in the second round and he'll play right away.
I think that him and JT Tuimoloau, in my opinion, are sort of the same conversation of when you're talking about drafting a guy. And I like Jackson a little better because I think he's got a little bit of extra bend ability. The cornering ability, I think, is to his advantage. And I think he's got a little bit longer of arms. So I think that's a conversation between those two guys. And now that it looks like Jackson has sort of passed those injuries, he's actually the guy that I would take, especially coming off of this past year.
Like in that mold?
Yeah, I mean, in the mold of sort of like what you were saying, like you're drafting a high floor, versatile type of player. And I think that JT Tuimoloau, he could play a little inside out for you because I think he's got the overall size from it. But I even think that Jackson got a little bit longer arms. He's a little bit more versatile to play in an odd front as a 3-4 defensive end. He's got the arm length to get up into the passing lanes, like you said, for batting down passes. He shows flashes at least of a little bit better cornering and bendability from him. And so those are all the little things that I give him the advantage for of why I had him a little bit higher than Tuimoloau. But I think those guys are sort of in that same conversation.
Where do you have Mykel Williams?
I have Mykel at 4.
Okay.
So you have him at 9, right?
Yes, because right. I think it's the combo we had a little bit.
So I also think Georgia pass rusher Mykel Williams is a great place to talk about Mykel here. So he's a junior this year, 6'5", 265 pounds, absolute vines for arms. This dude is built so well for an edge rusher. He's got the weight profile. He's got the length profile. He has the height profile. He is such a violent football player, but he just doesn't have a ton of stats at Georgia. He was not a guy who was in the backfield consistently. Now, the first 2 years that he was getting on the field for them, now, I will remind you, he was a 5-star defensive lineman, and he was the number 4 player in the 2022 recruiting class. He was originally committed to USC before ends up flipping to Georgia. He started 2 of his first 15 games when he was a true freshman for Georgia. He then played in 13 games with 10 starts last year, and then he was a full-time starter this year when he was out there and he was fully healthy. He played like a lot of guys at Georgia that we've sort of been frustrated about over the years, like Nolan Smith, for example. We watched Nolan Smith and we're like, okay, you're a 3-4 outside linebacker in the NFL. And Georgia was like, nope. You're playing 3-4 defensive end, buddy. Get your hands up there and defend the run. And Nolan Smith was such a freak that he was able to do it at a lower profile.
Yeah.
So that was sort of the same thing with Mykel, is he's mainly been this like 4-eye defensive end player for them. And they haven't really let him pin his ears back and get after the passer. And so with that being the case, I mean, this dude's an elite run defender. 86.0 run defense grades. I mean, he is strong as an ox in run defense, but he just doesn't have a lot of pass rush chops. 11.2% pass rush win percentage, pass rush grades in the 70s. But ultimately, the reason why I have him at number 4, and I think that I don't want to speak for you, it feels like I can understand why you're a little bit lower on him. I really do. When he tells himself like, all right, let me let loose here. I mean, The club arm over is one of the most quickest, violent club arm overs that you're going to see in this class and beyond. The hand, the pop that he has at contact when he gets his hands up there, I mean, the potential that this guy has is still incredibly high. And even though he is not a clean pass rusher, maybe I'm betting on him becoming one and he's just never going to become one. But I went into his tape thinking I'm going to be lower on Mykel Williams than most people in this class. And I came away thinking extremely high floor player, versatile because of his build, versatile because of his strength. And when he lets himself show some pass rush moves, getting into the backfield, even if it's things that are as simple as a club and an arm over, a club and a rip or something like that. Maybe he doesn't have that cross chop. Maybe he doesn't have that ghost move. Maybe he doesn't have that dip and rip or bend around the corner, around the outside shoulder. I just think he's too damn talented to not be drafting for a starting position in the pros. So I have him at number 4.
I get it, and a lot of people are going to. It's just with Mykel Williams, I think I just finally have a little fatigue of, like, this guy's got all the potential in the world, because now we watched it over summer, and I just did not see a jump this year as a pass rusher. Make no mistake, like Landon Jackson, although I was a little higher on Jackson, Mykel Williams has a serious power profile to defend the run. Like, he can take on any contact. He can hold the point of attack. He's hard to move. He's a pro caliber run defender. He just does not impact the game rushing the passer. And if I'm taking a guy like that in the first round, that's just not negotiable for me. It's not negotiable. And I came away watching him and how he wins, Trevor, which you just nailed it. Like, why wouldn't I rather have this guy on the interior defensive line playing at 285 pounds instead? He already looks like he's 270. I mean, we're not talking about a jarring difference. He's 6'5". He's got crazy length. I don't see the fluidity, the looseness, the agility to be this impact edge rusher. And there's not a lot of refinement. Like, Tuimoloau isn't loose and twitchy, but he's creative with his hands and crafty with his hands. That he stays off blocks, and he drove people backwards more often than Mykel Williams. So 9 is still strong in this class. It's still a early day 2 pick. But I would really struggle to take this player in the first round and guarantee that this is going to be a plus impact type of player to me.
Just to let everybody know, we've unfortunately got a 2-hour time limit here, so we're sort of speeding up with some of these guys here. So I'll talk about the Texas A&M guys next. You got Nic Scourton, who I have at number 7, and then I have his teammate Shemar Stewart at number 5. Nic Scourton was my edge 1 coming into this season, and I don't think there's any other way to say it. Like, I was disappointed by him this year. I thought the Purdue tape was awesome. I mean, this is somebody who is listed at 6'4". I wonder if he's a little bit shorter than 6'4", but 280 pounds. I mean, it felt like he had some good length, some good size. This year, he just didn't play with that same tenacity. He didn't play with the wide variety of pass rush moves that he showcased the year before. I think I noticed that his stride length was a little bit shorter. So, yeah, he's got a really nice first step, but it takes him a lot of steps to get even and out beyond the outside shoulders with offensive tackles. The arm length appeared to be below average as well. He played with a really high pad level this past year, which I didn't think was the case at Purdue, but it was the case when he was at Texas A&M. He consistently, him and Shemar Stewart, I wish they both didn't do this, but they consistently launch off the back foot. They're not doing themselves any favors by loading and launching off of that front foot. He wasn't as violent in the run game as I feel like he could have been. Like I saw him be when he was at Purdue. He just felt like he played with a lot more fire when he was at Purdue. He had a really deep bag of pass rush moves when he was there last season. But to me, I think that he's sort of a scheme versatile player. Like he could play as an interior defensive end for you. If you're in an odd front, he could play as a 4-3 defensive end with his hand in the dirt. Heck, he even does a lot of work as a 2-point stance rusher as well. So I think he's got a lot of great versatility. I think he's a talented football player, but I didn't feel like he had that same fire that he had the year before. And if he would have built off of that, I felt like he could have been a top 10 pick, but I'm much more in the vein of, I think he is a day 2 type of a player right now. So that's what I think about.
You had him at what?
7.
I had him at 4, and I did come away disappointed compared to expectations because he was my number 1 edge this summer. Number 1.
Yeah, me
too. With Abdul Carter at number 2. The difference is, to me, I just didn't think he looked as twitchy and agile. And I just wonder, is he just too big right now? Like, is he just too big? Should he be 265, 270, not 280? And you know what? Here's the real kicker for me, Trevor. Armand Membu from Missouri.
Yeah.
Shut him down.
Owned him. Yep.
The Texas O-line, both tackles, not much going there against them. And it's like, man, these are the games you gotta show up and show out. I still like him. I have him at 4. I think he's probably destined to be more of a end of round 1, top of round 2 player now.
I would agree.
The top 15 pick I expected him to be.
I would agree. And the rankings in the mock draft simulator, by the way, you guys are going to reflect that soon when we get off of this podcast.
Only 20 on draft night. So there's a lot.
Young player.
There's a lot in there. There's a lot in there for Nic Scourton.
His teammate, Shemar Stewart, though, I have him at number 5.
Okay. I'm watching him for IDL.
So I totally understand that because
he's 290 pounds.
He's 6'6", 290.
It's huge.
He's also a young player, and he was also a high-profile dude. 5-star defensive lineman in the 2022 class. He was a consensus top 10 player for basically every single recruiting service. He played football and basketball in high school. Again, just getting absolutely yammed on. You're on a mixtape playing up against Shemar Stewart when you're in high school. Explosive as hell. I mean, when you talk about here's some of his strengths. Imposing size, even for NFL standards. Top tier explosiveness for a player at his weight profile. Speed to power, absolutely devastating. Violent, strong hands to not only give you a pop, but also disengage. Impressive ability to corner for his size when he flashes it. And willing to hold the point of attack versus the run, not just a player who shoots into the backfield through gaps to defend the run. He can actually hold against the run. Now, there's inconsistencies I mentioned with which foot he's launching off of. He lets offensive tackles get their hands on him first. He doesn't have that timing of his hands to really be able to stay clean. His hands, when he does shoot, are often high and wide. They're not as precise as they need to be. And he just doesn't have a big time pass rush plan outside of really just being more athletic, being bigger, and having a good bull rush. So he reminded me a player whose role, I think he is more athletic than this player, but Deatrich Wise, what Deatrich Wise's role has been for a very multiple versatile defensive front for the New England Patriots. He's been a 3-4 defensive end. He's been a stand-up outside linebacker. He's even lined up as a nose. He'll line up as a hand in the dirt, 5 technique defensive end. Like Deatrich Wise has lined up all over the place for the Patriots front over the last couple of years. And I think that's a similar role for Shemar Stewart, excuse me.
This is a problem, by the way, as well.
I know. His teammate.
Good God.
We got to come on. We got to change the name. What is it? Josh Simmons. It's Jimmy. All right. Just come up with a different name. Just call him something else. You are now Jimmy.
We've reached the threshold on Josh's maximum capacity.
Jimmy Stewart from Texas A&M.
That was a great bit.
That's what we're calling him here. For everybody that doesn't get that joke from when we talked about offensive tackles, Josh Simmons, the offensive tackle from Ohio State, his teammates called him Jimmy, even though that's literally not his name, because there were already 2 Joshes on the team when he transferred over.
That was a summer scouting joke, wasn't it?
Jim, yes.
Yeah. That's incredible.
So Jimmy Stewart from Texas A&M. Ton of athletic potential, not a lot of refinement, but God, it's hard to not.
He's going to go.
And top 50 pick at the worst. So.
I haven't finished yet, but you just look at him and watch a couple games, and you're like, yeah, he's going to go early. It doesn't matter that he had not a huge stat padding season.
So real quick, Jack Sawyer, before we get into our top 3 guys, who I just realized are the same top 3, and I wasn't sure that was going to be the case, and here we are.
That it really did end that way. That's kind of crazy because we've been very different throughout this entire podcast.
We've been pretty different, yeah. I think for how we rank and see a lot of these guys, and then we came up with.
Where'd you have Sawyer?
6.
Oh, I had him 6 too. So we did land on that one.
Yep.
Sawyer is really what you see is what you get, isn't he? I mean,
feels like it.
Like yes. And that's good. For a lot of reasons with Sawyer, he's a sawed-off, hard-nosed edge rusher And when I say sawed off, like he does not have long arms. He's 6'4 and a quarter, 265. Cameron Williams of Texas is still looking behind him, wondering where Jack Sawyer went. Because this dude just, oh my. Yeah. What else do I need to say? No, but him and Tuimoloau really work well together because they do everything like fundamentally. It's such a high level with their hands, their ability to set a hard edge, their refined hand usage. They both have that 2-hand swipe working. They both are trying to work in this spin move. They've played at a high level against upper level competition. The eye discipline for these guys is really good. Sawyer is such a pro at driving through the hips with his tackles. A lot of these guys have bad missed tackle percentages. Like it's a legit thing that sticks out with a lot of these guys. Sawyer is a really strong tackler, good with leverage, drives blockers backwards, 96 percentile run defense grade. It's just he's not very fast. He doesn't have great length. Some of the 2024 production's a little inflated because 8 of them were unblocked, but I feel really good about him as my number 2 in a defense. If I have a number 1 like premier pass rusher and Sawyer's across from him, giving me sturdy run defense, a power profile rushing the passer, can win with his hands in a couple different ways, and just plays pissed off all the time, I'll gladly take that in round 2.
Extremely competitive player. I mean, the competitive toughness you absolutely love from him. I think he's a very high IQ football player as well. Really great eyes. You see that in how he's able to get his hands up into pass rushing lanes, even though he doesn't have vines for arms. I mean, he's got a lot of pass breakups because of the feel, honestly, that he has for the game. And I think that's a really good way to just talk about Jack Sawyer and why he's so great is because he is in a well-built defensive end's body, and he just has such a great feel for the game. He started off as an off-ball linebacker just to get him on the field 2 years ago. They moved him to full-time edge a year ago, and obviously he has been starting there ever since. So this is somebody who has one of the highest wins above replacement scores of any edge rusher that we're going to talk about this year. 0.39 average over the last 2 years, 0.48. So almost half a win above replacement for an edge rusher is a really strong score. And that comes from him playing almost 1,600 snaps over the last 2 years. Elite above 90 pass rush win percentage, elite above 90 run defense grade. There are some physical limitations. He's not the most explosive. He's not the most bendy. He doesn't have the longest arms. I think I think he tries to win with power a little too much. I would like to see a little bit more finesse in his game, but just rocks up. Again, I think you put it correct. If this guy's your edge 2, you've got a pretty damn good edge 1, and you're feeling good about your edge rusher room at the NFL level. So I'm with you.
Detroit Lions, step right up.
Dude, him and Aiden Hutchinson, one, it'd be amazing. Like it'd be the story of the Bash Brothers, or like it'd just be like rivals who hated each other. It'd be a Hollywood movie. I mean, Hard Knocks would have to just cover this storyline alone of these two dudes just hating each other and pulling pranks on each other during the summer. And, some of them are funny, but some of them are a little too serious. And then they hate each other, but then they come together at the end. It's a Hollywood story. Detroit wins the Super Bowl. Shout out Lions fans. So, yeah, we kind of need this. We actually kind of need this. America needs it. All right, top 3 players. Before we get into it, though, have you guys played Pick 6 by DraftKings? If you haven't yet, what are you waiting for? Playoffs are almost over. Time's running out. As the official daily fantasy partner of the NFL, DraftKings does fantasy sports like nobody else. Play for better payouts on Pick 6. It's super easy to get started. All you do is pick 2 or more players to have more or less of a single stat: touchdowns, receptions, total yards, sacks, tackles, whatever it is. You just pick one of those. Available most states, including Missouri, Texas, Georgia, California, a bunch of other ones. And if you haven't played it before, this is your first time playing. If you play just $5 on any Pick 6 set, you get 50 in Pick 6 credits right there. We've talked about a lot of great matchups here throughout the week of what's going to happen in these playoff games. If you think A.J. Brown or Saquon Barkley is absolutely going to go off in their matchup against the Rams, if you think Puka Nacua and Matthew Stafford are going to go off because they got to keep pace with them, check out their numbers, and you can do that for basically any matchup. Win more cash on Pick 6. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now. Use the promo code PFF. That's promo code PFF. To play $5 and get 50 in Pick 6 credits. Only on DraftKings Pick 6. The crown is yours. If you got a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problems with gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited, 1 per new customer. Bonuses awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire within 30 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/ promos. All right, buddy. I'm just going to ask you. Where's Mike Green?
Number 2.
All right, he's 3 for me.
Oh, I was so ready to welcome you to the party.
What? I am in top 3. What do you mean?
No, number 2 is that's the board of directors.
What do you mean?
That's where you sit at the board of directors.
Okay.
Yeah. You're close.
Right.
You're close. You're much closer than you were.
I am much closer than what I was. You are right.
This is good.
Mike Green, redshirt sophomore from Marshall, but I will say the redshirt sophomore tab is a little bit fraudulent because he started his career at Virginia. He played there for a season, and then he transferred to Marshall, but then he had to sit out an entire year due to transfer rules. So, Yes, technically he's a redshirt sophomore, but it's not like he's 19 years old, like going into the draft or something, like or 20 years old. I think he's 22. I think 21, 22 will be 22 on draft night. I'll double check that in a second. But Marshall, all due respect to Marshall, of course, doesn't have first round pass rushers too often. And they got a damn good one in Mike Green. So, look, I'll give you the honors. Talk to us about Mike Green. You got him at number 2 here.
Yeah, I've liked this guy for a while. He's just, 6'4", 248. I've said for a while, back in the day when Hassan Reddick was good, which was not this year, that's who he reminds me of. He's just so loose. Like, this is an excellent athlete, high-end agility. He had 17 sacks this year. He had a 21% pass rush win rate. He creates havoc, but he also finishes plays because he's got really good speed. The ghost move is elite, like legitimately elite. It's where, his ability to just keep tackles off of him and turn the corner. And he also uses that Euro step to kind of win outside as well. So he's got a different package. It's not just, let me get off the ball quicker than everyone else and run around the corner. There's a couple different things he's working in here, but he can counter inside with an arm over. And that's what unlocked Mike Green to be a 17 sack player, is that when a tackle has to set that wide and the gate opens up between him and the guard, Green's ghost move, Euro step, outside speed, dip in the shoulder, working that sets up the inside counter with the arm over. And when you have elite agility and you can cross the face of a tackle and win through that gap, that's going to lead to a really high sack totals. I think his upper and lower half stay in sync with plus change of direction.
Yes, he's such an easy watch, man.
Yes, like everything is in sync from head to toe. And that's why when he changes direction, it almost looks like a running back rather than a stand-up edge rusher. Really good leverage in the run game for his weight. Like he plays low, he strikes with his hands really hard, and he's not the biggest edge rusher in the world, although I think he'll come into the combine around 250. Rather than, where people think he's playing around like 240. I don't know. He's dense, this guy. 6'4". I think he'll be at the combine at 250. And he has no fear against the run. Like, it's not like I need to swivel around everybody to make a play against the run. I will take on a puller and I might get hit hard, but I'll take him on and at least leave the alley and the lanes for everybody else to come make the play. The biggest question with Mike Green right now is, like, can he sustain this against better competition? He got to play against Ohio State this year.
Yep.
He's going to the Senior Bowl. So this isn't a David Walker situation. But if he goes down to the Senior Bowl and puts on this kind of display against the top tackles, Mike Green is going in the top 16 picks of the draft.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, man. And just to echo and piggyback off of some of what you said there, this dude was a wrestler when he was in high school. So he's a trench player with a great wrestling background to him as well. Finished second in the state tournament as a sophomore at 185 and the third in the state tournament as a junior at 220. So, all I heard there is that he didn't win. So first loser and second loser. I'm just kidding. Mike, calm down.
The hate continues.
Played both linebacker and tight end when he was in high school. He's just played all around the football field. He was on Feldman's freak list. Bruce Feldman wrote, quote, "This summer, Green ran a 4.57 40-yard dash, bench pressed 405 pounds, power clean 365, and squatted 525. Not bad. Not bad. Not bad there for him. I just think you just got to love how this guy played. I mentioned to you right there when you were talking about him, he's just such an easy watch. Adequate length and size for the NFL position, really built, well-balanced, great core strength, explosive first step to immediately threaten the outside, which we talked about being a deficiency for some of these other guys. Oh, it ain't the case for these three guys that we're going to talk about here at the very top, Mike Green included. He can really get up the arc. and threaten the outside shoulder in any situation. Good lateral quickness as well. The cross chop move, the dip and rip, anything to get across the face. I mean, he's fantastic when it comes to flexibility and lateral quickness. Consistently physical play. I felt like I was going to watch this guy and he was mainly going to be just somebody who was going to try to win with his athleticism, and he's not, man. He loves to be physical, and he is always working to get clean, even if he doesn't know exactly how to do that yet. Would love for him to go to the Latu school of getting clean and just having that sort of hand usage to really master that, because if this guy's able to take that next step in that regard, and if he's been able to work on that and continue to do that heading into the Senior Bowl, you're right. I mean, this is going to be a top 15 selection, somebody that you could talk about for the New Orleans Saints at number 9, the Carolina Panthers at number 8. Like he's that good. I think that this player is it has so much potential in the NFL, and I think that his numbers show that. So I have James Pearce Jr. from Tennessee at number 2. This is another kind of coming around moment for me, because if you'll remember summer scouting, I was not super high on James Pearce. I felt like the 2023 tape last year, he was feasting on really bad offensive tackles, feasting against bad competition, and a lot of it was very feast or famine in what he was able to do in general. But this year, I think he got a lot stronger. I think he was a lot more conscious against the run. He used his leverage to his advantage a lot more. He was a lot more conscious of that. And even though I would still like to see him win in ways that aren't just finesse, he at least made a conscious effort to, I think, execute some other pass rush moves, be able to attack the inside shoulder a little bit more, because I just felt like if he wasn't timing the snap count correctly going into this year, so just looking at last year's tape, if he wasn't able to time the snap count correctly, he wasn't able to be the player that you really needed him to be. And this year, I think that it was different. Not only did you see that elite first step explosiveness for him. And when I say elite, I don't mean just for the college level. I mean for the NFL level.
Yeah, it is.
He's incredibly twitched up, so quick off the ball, very fast hands, decent speed to power because of how fast that first step is. He's actually got some pretty some pretty decent spot dropping ability. So as a 3-4 outside linebacker, that's how you want this guy to play. He's listed at 6'5", 240 pounds. So he's got a much leaner frame. He reminds me of what Randy Gregory was supposed to be.
I like that.
You watch Randy Gregory at Nebraska, and it is this long, explosive pass rusher who gives you all sorts of fits, attacking either shoulder. And I felt like I saw a lot of James Pearce Jr. In that sort of mold. So this is somebody who 99th percentile pass rush win percentage. If you draft him as a stand-up outside linebacker, I think that, oh man, he's just going to be able to bring so much juice to your pass rush room at the NFL level.
I'm with you. The movement skills are just so unique. I actually like the pound for pound strength too that he has. Considering
this year,
I think the pound for pound strength is impressive for his weight. And you could just do a lot of different things with Pearce. Like, he's athletic enough to play in space, drop into coverage. If you're on an island with this guy, like, it's not going to be fun for you, because he can cross your face. He can win with speed. He plays incredibly fast, explosive, loose. You nailed it. He's a kind of a master at timing and jumping snaps. There's so much to like with him as a pure pass rusher. Him and Mike Green, if you need a pure pass rusher, that's why I think both those guys are just going to go. Mm-hmm. They know how to get you off the field. Like, it's 3rd and 8. These guys are standing up. They're a wide alignment. Our tackle's on an island. We can't block this guy. He's going to get after the quarterback. And that's the beauty of Pearce and Green, because they have such great movement ability.
Now, the strange thing for me with Pearce in his scouting profile is he's only played 926 snaps over the last 2 years. Tennessee has like this 10-man defensive line rotation that they like hockey sub all the time.
Look at Norman Lott, the D tackle. He barely plays.
I know. So like that's sort of the weird thing is like, yeah, all right, he's got these really good numbers. Are they only like playing him in advantageous situations? Is he not this like full-time edge rusher for the NFL? Are they sort of like hiding some deficiencies that he had? You could watch the tape and see a little of the pros and cons, but that's just something to think about, is that rotation that Tennessee had. It wasn't like it was just James Pearce that they were taking off the field. It's just an interesting part of his scouting evaluation that is like that. But in my opinion, you saw there were some of the moves that I saw this year. The long arm with him having the 6'5" frame and the long arms to him. I think that that's really advantageous for him to be able to burst off the line of scrimmage, get these offensive linemen off balance pretty quickly, and then be able to do something. If he has a good counter, I think that that'd be a good addition to his game. Rip moves are very fast. The chop move is very fast. The chop rip combo, the two-handed swipe. I thought the two-handed swipe got a lot better this year, but yeah, just continuing to see an emphasis in that finesse game as a player who brings rare explosiveness. And I thought the speed to power was a lot better this year than it was last year, which gives me faith for this guy to be an impact player at the NFL level. That means number one is Penn State's Abdul Carter. Carter was an off-ball linebacker for Penn State over the last 2 seasons. This past year, though, his first 2 seasons, I should say. This past year, though, they moved him to edge rusher full-time. Listed at 6'3", 260 pounds. So for an edge rusher, a little bit below 50th percentile. It's 32nd percentile for height, 39th percentile when it comes to weight. He's a true junior, so he's one of the younger players in this class. But man, you talk about somebody who can bring you everything you want. I mean, he brings you the burst, the twitch, the bend, the insane lateral quickness and agility. And yet he also, unlike some of the concerns that you might have with James Pearce Jr., brings you a physical profile because he came from that off-ball linebacker background.
Yep. He's about that life.
He is not afraid to be physical at all times. He has some of the most devastating cross-face moves that you will see at insane speeds, which have made him unblockable when he has been out there throughout his college football career, and why I think he's a top pass rusher in this class. I think he should be a candidate to go number 1 overall.
I agree.
I don't think he will go number 1 overall because just quarterback situation is what the quarterback situation is. But dude, 0.65 wins above replacement average this year in our metrics. I mean, that is without question the highest grade. To me, he brings you everything that James Pearce Jr. brings you, but he's a little bit stronger. He's a little bit bigger, and he plays a little bit more physical. And that's why he's number 1 on this list for me.
Just the way he hits people when he arrives was the biggest indicator to me this summer, and it carried over into the season. It's not like he arrives, it's good form. It's not reckless.
No, it is.
It just bodies react differently when this guy hits you. Mm-hmm. Differently. I'm with you all the way. I mean, he was hurt against Notre Dame, and I thought he made some big plays against the run.
Dude, he's winning with one arm.
He's got one arm out there.
Dictating the game with one arm.
And against the run, where you think he'd be limited because you think that you just can't get a read on things and you're trying to stay off blocks. I was wildly impressed with that game. He is so explosive, flexible, A+ speed. You nailed the moves. They stand him up over guards and centers, and it's like what the Cowboys did with Micah Parsons when he got going.
I don't want to just say Micah Parsons because both of them played for Penn State. They both played in the exact same role, and they both wear number 11. But, like, how do you not see Micah Parsons when you watch this guy? They're built the same way. They're both about 6'3", right. 255, 260 pounds. Mm-hmm. They both have a little bit shorter arm length than you would probably want for a defensive lineman. But they're insanely explosive. They're insanely twitchy. They've got incredible bend. I mean, like, I hate doing the parallel because it's not only, we went to the same school. He's wearing the same number. He's playing the same position, but it's so hard to not.
Same trajectory.
It's the same exact trajectory. I'm not saying that he's going to be Parsons, but he is absolutely in that mold, and that is not just because they went to the same school. He's got a basketball background as well. He's a standout power forward when he was playing in high school, and so when you watch him hit that hesitation move and hit that stutter step in front of interior offensive linemen, that's where that comes from. He's back to his basketball days, and he's hitting those things clean. So, and there's a couple of things that I think he could work on. I think he had the shoulder injury. I think he leads with the shoulder a lot when like taking on contact, especially when it's pullers, like in split zone situations. Now, I know that's sort of like the form is what you want to do. You know, you just want you want to give them a good shiver, but there are some times when I watch him and I go, ooh, like, is that part of why, like, kind of the shoulder injury, you know, like I feel like you gotta watch a little bit of that, but I understand that that's technique. That's fundamentally sound. You just got to make sure you're as disciplined with your fundamentals as possible when doing stuff like that, especially with the shoulder injury there from him. And then the other aspect of it is, you know what's crazy? there are so many reps where this guy doesn't even launch off the front foot. He could be even better at attacking the outside shoulder if he launched off of his front foot with more regularity. Now he does. It's just a little bit of like, it's not an always type of a thing like I wish it was. And if it is, oh man, special football player here for Abdul Carter.
The awakening for me was the Illinois game. The first 3 weeks of the season, new position, a little bit of a slow start. He started to show off a spin move. And then since the Illinois game, like he wrecked them. He made some plays against UCLA. He made some plays against USC. And then you just see the improvement really shine. Ohio State, Washington, Maryland, the playoff. Like, it's wild to think how insanely impressive the tape was this year. And he's getting better. Mm-hmm. He is getting way better and comfortable over time. Where I'm with, like, I think there's going to be a combo, at least a combo around him going 1 or 2 overall.
I agree.
I do.
It's like the meme where his first game was against West Virginia this year as like a full-time edge rusher, and his worst grade, it was like a 43.9 overall grade. And then he's just like, I understand it now. And they just went on an absolute tear nuts the rest of the season. We would love to hear from you. Well, actually, really quick, 15-1. List them off. Go ahead, please.
All right, let's rip through this here. 15-1. I had David Walker from Central Arkansas at 15. At 14, I had Jah Joyner from Minnesota. At 13, I had Ashton Gillotte from Louisville. At 12, I had Donovan Ezeiruaku from Boston College. At 11, I had Jordan Burch from Oregon. At 10, I had Josaiah Stewart from Michigan. At 9, I had Mykel Williams from Georgia. 8, I had Landon Jackson from Arkansas. 7, I had Princely Umanmielen from Ole Miss. 6, I had Jack Sawyer from Ohio State and his teammate at 5 and JT Tuimoloau. 4, I had Nic Scourton, transferred from Purdue to Texas A&M. 3, James Pearce Jr. from Tennessee. 2, Mike Green from Marshall. Number 1, no surprise, Abdul Carter, maybe the best player in the draft from Penn State.
Number 15, I had Josiah Stewart from Michigan. 14, Kennard from South Carolina. 13, Jordan Burch from Oregon. 12, JT Tuimoloau from Ohio State. 11, Princely Umanmielen from Ole Miss. 10, Jalon Walker from Georgia. 9, Landon Jackson from Arkansas. 8, Donovan Ezeiruaku from Boston College. 7, Nic Scourton from Texas A&M. 6, Jack Sawyer from Ohio State. 5, Shemar Stewart, a.k.a. Jimmy, from Texas A&M. Number 4, I had Mykel Williams from Georgia. 3, Mike Green from Marshall. 2, James Pearce Jr. from Tennessee. And number 1, Abdul Carter from Penn State. We would love to hear from you guys as always. Edge Rush is always a fun group. You've watched a lot of these great pass rushers throughout their college careers. Let us know what you thought of our rankings and where we had them, and we would love to hear from you guys as well. Best way to do that, youtube.com/@NFL Stock Exchange. If you're listening to this audio only, you don't have a YouTube account, you can hit us up at Tampa Bay Trey, at Connor J. Rogers on Instagram and Twitter. Next week, we'll have 2 episodes again. We'll have another position ranking at some point, but then after that, it might get a little messy with some of the All-Star game travel, but we'll make sure that we're covering you for Shrine Bowl, for Senior Bowl. We'll do some previews. We'll do that good stuff. But Connor, anything else before we get out of here?
No, this is obviously a really good class. That's why we spent over 2 hours on it, and we didn't even finish the amount of great players that are in this draft class. So we'll revisit it again, and I'm really excited to see everybody's takes in this one.
Appreciate everybody watching and listening. For Connor Rogers, I'm Trevor Sikkema. This was the NFL Stock Exchange Podcast. See you guys next time.